Welcome to this facility and thank you for the city of San Diego accommodating us and being here. APCD doesn't have its own facility to hold board meetings, so we rely on other parts of the county, other agencies to help. So thank you for the San Diego accommodating us here today. With that, I'm going to call the September 12th, 2024 APCD governing board meeting order. And clerk, did you call the roll?
Thank you, Chair Shu. I would like to remind those members of the public that are joining us via teleconference to please select your preferred language using the interpretation button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Before I call the roll, I would like to note for the record that members Elo Rivera and Lawson Reamer, members Elo Rivera and Medina have notified us that they will be absent from today's proceedings. All remaining board members are participating in person. With that, Member Bush.
Here.
Member Gloria.
Here.
Member Gomez. Here. Member Lawson Reamer. Member Martinez. Member Vargas. Vargas here. Vice Chair Santos. Present. Chair Shu.
Here.
Thank you.
We're going to go to non-agenda public comments, but I'm going to preface what we're doing today. We have some hard stop times of how long we can stay in this space. We have a very long agenda. I'm going to provide so we're going to have to use some other rules with regard to the amount of time allotted for public comment. And other agencies in the county do this all the time. This is simply because we want to make sure that we have a forum and cover the items we have on the agenda that we have to cover in time. So given that public comment time will be limited to 1 minute for each individual that wants to give. In addition, for this meeting, you cannot cede time to another individual. That's often done at other public meetings as well. With non-agendized public comments, please, your comment has to be on something that's not on the agenda and something that we don't have already scheduled to speak on. So with that, I'm going to ask Brooke to provide testimony. And I don't know if we need any instructions for Spanish translation. Fine. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with non-agendized public comments.
Thank you, Chair Shu. I would ask members of the public that have requested to speak on this item that are here in the conference room to please approach the podium at this time. We have 2 members of the public that have requested to speak that are here in the room, Ms. Purita Javier and Cesar Javier. I would ask you to approach the podium at this time. You will have 1 minute.
May I request that the sound be added volume, please?
We don't have any speaking system, so you're just going to have to speak up. Your voice is pretty strong, so I think we're
Can you hear me, sir?
very good. So one minute, Ms. Henry.
So you have 1 minute to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record, and you can self-regulate your time using the timer that is on the screen.
September 12, 2024. We are victims of toxicity, air quality, air pollution, emission from a non-metallic mineral product manufacturing, aka ceramics manufacturing and kiln, industrial home business owner and operated by Donald J. Fraser and wife Evelyn Fraser, located at 5238 Springview Drive, San Diego, California 92105. It is located, constructed, and operated in a residential zone, designated community since December 17, 1984. Our community predominantly Asian, Americans.
That's 1 minute. We gave you our humble literature, sir. And my only question now is, when are you going to stop?
Can you please state your name for the record?
Cesar Javier. Military family member. veteran, sick, dead. We want solution to toxicity in our community designated as residential zone. Where are the loose? Where are the blue from the city? Where is your road? It's double standard. You can inspect big businesses, come and go, and you cannot enter the property of the toxic emanating business. Double standard. And you're limiting our time when we are here sick and dying. Solve it. Mayor Gloria, Mom Vargas, Director Service. You said nuisance? Where is the result now? Chief compliant,
Mr. Javier.
you visited us 3 times. What did you do? I'm sorry, but that is my 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go on. Is approval of the June 15th, 2024 statement of proceedings and minutes. But you have some instructions for testimony.
Thank you, Chair. To any members of the public that have requested to speak on this item, I would ask that you please approach the podium at this time. For those of you that are joining us and via teleconference, please dial into the conference line now, or use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen by pressing star 9 now, or by pressing raise hand at the bottom of the screen. We will acknowledge you. Seeing no hands raised and no movement here in the chamber, there are hands raised.
We have members of the board that must recognize this one at the time on the proceeding. Okay, you have some online.
We have 2 members of the public that wish to address the board under for public comment for statement of proceedings. And I do want to ensure that the members of the public that have their hands raised virtually wish to make comments on the statement of proceedings from June 13th, 2024. If not, I would ask that you lower your hand. Our first speaker will be Patty Bowman. You will have 1 minute to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Patty Bowman. Can you hear me?
Yes. You can begin.
I live in IB. We moved 4 years ago, and we can't even walk outside. We can't sleep at night. We need you to make sure we get more testing. The air is toxic now. Our dog is sick. I was sick.
Ma'am, I'm gonna need you, have to stop you real quick. It sounds like your comments are related to an agenda item. Right now, we are on agenda item, I believe it's C, which is the statement of proceedings, the approval of the statement of proceedings. So unless you have comments concerning that, you'll have to save your comments for later in our agenda.
So Ms. Bowman will be item number 3, so we'll bring you back then. Another.
That concludes public testimony on this item.
Thank you. Do I have any comments from any board members on the statement of proceedings?
I didn't see.
Would be moved by Ms. Gloria,
Second.
second by
Gomez.
Gomez. That's, we need a roll call vote, and I think all members, including the minutes for June 13th, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Abstentions?
Thank you. With members Elo Rivera, Lawson Beamer, and Medina absent, that motion passes with those board members who are present voting aye.
Move on to the consent calendar. There are a number of items on the consent calendar, but in the interest of saving time, I'm going to allow 1 minute for all the agenda items on consent. So Madam Clerk, please provide instructions for public testimony.
The public that would like to provide testimony on this item, please that are here in the conference room. So please approach the podium at this time. We have Cesar Javier. Also, those that are joining us virtually, if you wish to address the board on this item, please use the raise hand feature that is located at the bottom of your screen, or press star 9 if you are joining via telephone. You have 1 minute to address the board.
My only concern here is APTD and each governing board has been here for many, many years. And they're talking about cost recovery, they're talking about organizational, operational matters. Supposed to be very vital in the conduct of achievement of the mission, air quality for all. It looks like air quality for the rich and not for the poor. Why is it, governing board, where our director is accountable to you and depend to you for decision making? I support this continuing amendments, continuing study, continuing improvement. If only that our district air pollution is sharp, efficient. We support this continuing amendment, sir. Madam, best days. I'm getting hope and inspiration at last from the presence of our board supervisor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We have one additional speaker that has their hand raised online, Alejandro. I would first like to ensure that you wish to pull an item from the consent calendar. That would be item D1 through D4. Can you please confirm that?
Yeah, I actually wanted to mention real quick that the audio on the virtual call is really, really bad. I think it's not just me because it just sounds very echoey, so it's hard to see which item you're on.
Okay, thank you. Were you wishing to pull an item off of the consent calendar, item 1 through 4?
No, that's not it. I just wanted to make sure that we don't miss the next agenda items because I think that's why people are confused online on which agenda item is being spoken about at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Before I move forward, I would like to note for items D3 and D4 that pursuant to Government Code Section 54953, prior to taking final action, a legislative body shall orally report a summary of a recommendation for a final action on the salary or compensation paid in the form of local agency executives. Agenda items D3 and D4 includes an increase to the salary of the air pollution control officer to $242,580 effective June 13th, 2024. And employer paid contributions to the air pollution control officer's deferred compensation plan in the amount of up to 5% of the annual salary and additional pay towards some of the taxes on that contribution. With that note on the record, that item may remain, D, they may remain on consent.
Thank you. Do I have any colleagues that want to make any comments on the consent calendar?
Mr. Chairman, I move consent items B1 through 4.
Yeah, 2 seconds.
Okay, seconded by Sanchez, moved by Gloria. All members in favor say aye. Any nays? Any abstentions?
Thank you. With members Ela Rivera, La Serena, and Medina absent, that motion passes with those board members who are present voting aye.
Then move on to E1, public hearing. Giving a presentation for the proposed amendments to Rule 40 permit and other fees. So we have a presentation.
Load up here.
Thank you, Chair Stu. I would ask those members of the public that wish to address the board on this item to please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that are on your Zoom screen. Any members of the public that wish to address the board, please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. Your testimony will be heard at the conclusion of the staff presentation.
And now we'll go to Michael Watt. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair Stu. Good afternoon, Chair Stu, board members. My name is Mike Watt. I'm a Deputy Director here at SDAPCD, and I'm joined today by Stephanie Nicholas, our Chief of Business Support Services. Today's hearing is to receive a presentation and consider public comment on the proposed amendments to Rule 40, permit and other fees. Next slide, please. 40 sets the fees for the district's permitting and other services, such as inspection and source testing, related to implementation of the region-wide permitting and regulatory program for stationary sources of air pollution. Stationary sources encompass large industrial facilities such as power plants, smaller commercial establishments such as dry cleaners and gas stations, and asbestos renovation and demolition activities. Next slide, please. In July of 2020, the state auditor issued a report which identified that the district's stationary source fee-related expenses were not being fully recovered, which included a recommendation to increase fees annually by the maximum percentage allowed until district's revenue from fees is equal to the full cost of the program. In fiscal year 21-22, the district completed the first cost recovery study, which provided a tool for understanding current service levels and the cost and demand for those services. That tool has been used to bring forward updated cost recovery packages that have been approved by the board and implemented in each of the last 3 fiscal years. I'll now turn it over to Stephanie to take us through the rest of the presentation. Next slide.
Thank you, Mike. The district cost recovery study is analyzed and updated each year with the most recent cost and revenue data, estimates, and projections. It's important to note that each year, the estimated cost, revenue, and deficit amounts will change based on the most recent analysis. For fiscal year 25-26 cost recovery model, the district project team made the following key updates and changes. We updated the model to include changes and costs reflected in the board adopted fiscal year 24-25 budget, such as salary and benefits. We also included cost changes resulting from updated workload revenue and updated revenue projections based on prior year board adopted fees. Currently, the district does not have a dedicated revenue source to recover the costs of implementing the emissions inventory requirements. Over the next few years, the number of facilities subject to emissions inventory requirements is approximately 200 to over 4,000 based on new state mandates. As a result, we are recommending implementation of a phased approach towards recovering these fees. To enable the initial phase of cost recovery for preparing emissions inventory report, the district is proposing a new provision in Rule 40, effective January 1, 2025, that would apply to approximately 200 facilities with multiple emission units that have historically been part of the emissions inventory program and are now subject to additional requirements based on new state mandates. Due to the increasing costs associated with these expanded state mandates and the varying size and complexity of these types of facilities, the time it takes to evaluate emissions data can fluctuate significantly based on the type of permit and quality of data submitted. Therefore, a time and materials approach is recommended to ensure that each facility is fairly assessed for the actual time and effort spent on a particular review. As the new facilities phase into the emissions inventory program over the next few years, the district will gather labor data to evaluate the time it takes to prepare their emissions inventory report, which we anticipate will have less fluctuations and complexities based on the nature of the equipment. The district intends to evaluate the potential to implement a fixed fee as part of a future proposal for these smaller facilities to recover costs. The proposed updates and changes are reflected in the revised Rule 40 fee schedule that is posted on the district's website as part of this update. Based on the updates related to staffing, projected costs, and new emissions inventory provisions, the annual revenue, cost, and deficit has been calculated. The information on this slide is a breakdown of where we currently are with attaining maximum cost recovery for fee-related services that support the district stationary source permitting and regulatory programs. When comparing estimated fiscal year 24-25 fees, fee-related expenses of $13.7 million with fee-related revenue of $11.6 million based on fiscal year 23-24 workload, the district is under recovering its costs by approximately $2.1 million for recovering approximately 85% of annual fee-related costs. It is important to stress two factors. One, there is currently no dedicated fee-related mechanism for recovering inventory costs included in this analysis. As a result, these costs are covered through a combination of other funding sources rather than fee for service, which conflicts with the district's audit finding that require fee-related services be offset by fee-related revenue. Adding the provision in Rule 40 to authorize the district to charge time and material would allow the district to recover the costs associated with providing emissions inventory services to the facilities subject to this provision. And the second note is that the fee categories above represent estimated revenue and costs for a range of services provided under each fee category and are not inclusive of all other non-fee related components within a program. The annual cost is only reflective of fee-related support provided for those stationary source permitting and regulatory services and does not encompass the entire program. For example, the district has a mobile source inspection unit whose cost is not included in this calculation as that cost is not a permit or fee-related service. The California Health and Safety Code states that the district has the ability to increase fees for service for permit to operate and authority to construct permits as long as the total revenue for those fee categories does not exceed 15% in a single fiscal year. As such, district staff is proposing a fiscal year 2025-26 cost recovery scenario, which applies a maximum 15% increase to applications, renewal, source testing, time and materials, and administrative processing fees. We are proposing a 10% increase to asbestos fees and no increase to hearing board fees to ensure that the hearing board does not become cost prohibitive. This proposal is consistent with the governing board's direction for the current year's fee. Cost recovery projections in the emissions inventory category are shown at 100% for fiscal year 25-26. And this projection is based on the proposal to recover the cost via time and materials fees based on actual time spent providing emissions inventory services to the facility subject to the proposed provision, not the entire emissions inventory program. Under this recommended fee increase proposal, the district would be projected to increase its estimated overall fee for service cost recovery from 85% to approximately 96%. Next slide. This slide provides a more detailed breakdown of proposed changes by fee category. As you can see, the range of proposed changes varies by fee type based on several factors, including the cost to perform the specific services included in each category and how close those individual fees are to attaining maximum cost recovery for that service. If adopted at November's hearing, the proposed amendments to these fees would become effective July 1, 2025, which will allow for testing of the new fees, revised invoicing, and continued outreach to stakeholders prior to implementation. Next slide, please. These recommendations allow the district to remain consistent by focusing on increasing revenues across all fee categories to continue to increase its fee for service cost recovery. Under the recommended fee increase, the district would be projected to increase its estimated fee revenue by approximately $1.5 million and decrease its projected deficit from $2.1 million to $600,000. The key advantages to this recommendation is that it is consistent with previous board adopted practices. It enables the district to continue its movement towards increasing cost recovery and applies fee increases consistently across all categories. Next slide, please. When the district first started the study process in 2021, the overall cost recovery for stationary source permitting fees was calculated at approximately 66%. As noted previously, the board's actions on fees have increased the district's estimated overall fee for service cost recovery percentages for these programs to approximately 85%. This is the district's 5th year of conducting the study and update, and these proposed fiscal year 25-26 updates are projected to increase the overall cost recovery percentages to approximately 96%. The original study had estimated that it would take the district more than 5 years to get to maximum cost recovery, and as such, the district is on track towards achieving maximum fee-related cost recovery. Cost recovery percentages will fluctuate from year to year based on a variety of factors such as negotiated salary benefit increases, staffing vacancy rates, changes in program volume and workload, and the cost of service needed to perform stationary source-related activities. Next slide, please. As part of our stakeholder engagement process, a public workshop was held in July 2024 to proactively seek input from stakeholders related to the proposed emissions inventory provision that is included in this proposal. 5 attendees that participated in the workshop, which was recorded and posted to the district's website. Today's hearing is the first of 2 scheduled public hearings on proposed amendments to District Rule 40 for If approved at the November board hearing, the new emissions inventory provision would become effective January 1, 2025, to align with the emissions inventory data collection period, and the amendments to the proposed proposed for the district's existing fees would become effective July 1, 2025. The district reached out to over 15,000 permit holders, stakeholders, and industry groups through direct mailings in English and Spanish. Emails went out to subscribers, and the posting of information on the district's website about the July workshop, today's hearing, and the upcoming November hearing were done as well. Next slide. Some of the feedback we received from stakeholders so far have included concerns about increasing costs to ratepayers, the desire for additional details on real-time charges, assistance with estimating emissions inventory charges for subject facilities, and questions regarding the logistics of the emissions inventory invoicing process. District staff continue to look for ways to reduce costs for our operations, as well as cost to customers by implementing process improvements and efficiencies to reduce increases to fees and hourly rates, while also trying to achieve maximum cost recovery. Limited stages of development of tools for our customers to have more insight into their time and material charges. These tools would include identifying what work was charged for, how much was charged, and who performed the work. At this time, invoicing logistics for the proposed emissions inventory changes are still being finalized and will be communicated to ratepayers before. Next slide. In closing, today's recommended actions are: 1, to open a public hearing on the proposed amendments to Rule 40, and 2, direct the Air Pollution Control Officer to return to the board on November 14th to consider adoption of the proposed amendments to Rule 40. Next slide, please. This concludes today's presentation, and we are available for questions.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, can you give us instructions on public comment and if you have any? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair Stu. I would first like to note for the record that we have joined the meeting. I would also note that we have received no public testimony request for item E1. Yeah, one. We have one virtual comment. Mr. Jack Munger. You will have 3 minutes, you will have 1 minute to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Jack Munger with the Industrial Environmental Association. Thank you, Chair and members of the board, for the opportunity to comment today. Just a couple of suggestions and questions we would ask, beginning with the fact that a lot of IEA companies have facilities in other air districts around California, and San Diego is the only district we're aware of that takes on the burden of performing the emission calculations for each facility in the region. A major benefit of the system used by South Coast and others is a reduction in the amount of back and forth discussions between the district and the facility, which means reduced staff costs and less time required to complete the process. And we would hope that this would be looked at further as a way to keep those costs to a minimum. We also point out, as noted, that going forward, transparency will be exceedingly important, and we ask that the district find a method to provide backup materials. Finally, the question of labor rates. The district used to have individual labor rates for various positions, junior engineer, associate engineer, but now that's all been lumped together. And since most of the work is performed by lower level personnel, charging a flat rate, $300 or more for those, doesn't seem to be appropriate. Thank you for the chance to comment today.
Thank you. That concludes public testimony on this item.
Thank you. Do you have any comments from my colleagues? If not, I take the motion.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nay? Thank you.
Thank you. With members Ela Rivera and Medina absent, that motion passes with those board members who are present voting aye.
Going to move on to item E2, but let me announce in advance. I'm going to be moving item E4 to follow E2 to ensure that we address that item in the time that we have. And I think it'll be better for us to try to conclude on with item 3. But with that, we're going to go on to E2, update on possible memorandum with the San Diego Unified Port District for the implementation of the Maritime Clean their strategy and, Portside community mission. That's the plan. So I'm going to provide instructions on public testimony.
Thank you, Chair Shu. I would ask any members of the public that are joining us via teleconference that wish to on item E2 to please indicate that you wish to do so by using the raise hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You may also press *9 now to indicate that you wish to speak. All public testimony will be heard at the conclusion of the staff presentation.
Thank you, and for the presentation with the Deputy Director. Thank you.
Good afternoon again, everybody. Mike Watt. I'm joined today by our Rule Development Supervisor, Nick Cormier. As mentioned, today we're going to be discussing possible framework of a potential memorandum of understanding or MOU between the Erosion Control District and the Port of San Diego. Today's requested action is informational only. To receive today's presentation, and provide feedback. With that, I'll pass it on to Nick for the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Mike. Next slide, please. As a refresher, AB 423 included a provision that APCD consider measures to reduce indirect source emissions from mobile sources, including warehouses, distribution centers, and ports. APCD and port staff have been meeting for 2 years and have also met with the governing board and Portside steering committee twice, and the Port Board of Commissioners, seeking feedback on possible draft MOU concepts. Next slide, please. It's also important to highlight the investments that the Port of San Diego, tenants, and agency as well already made to further encourage emission reductions from port operations. Approximately $125 million in total investments have already been made. There's clearly more work to do, but additional funding can be, some of which will be included within this MOU. Slide, please. Both agencies agree that a balanced MOU that improves public health, protects good paying jobs, and accelerates implementation of MCAS and SURF goals high priority. We believe an MOU can achieve these objectives, quickly reduce emissions, and strengthen APCD and the port's relationship with tenants, service providers, and community members if successful. We also see this MOU as an opportunity to promote transparency in future projects. The MOU would not exempt or preempt existing air quality regulations. Both agencies are also working together to ensure the MOU has robust accountability provisions. Next slide, please. We envision a 6-year term for the MOU, meaning if it is adopted by both respective boards sometime next year, the MOU would be in place from 2025 through 2031. As long as the MOU and its provisions are being successfully implemented, staff believe an MOU would continue to serve in place of any indirect source rule affecting port operation. As envisioned, the MOU would comprise of the following 6 draft measures. Next slide. A common theme emerged that incentive funding opportunities should remain open for port and port tenants as they make significant investments to switch to zero emission technology. This proposed measure will prioritize an initial allocation of $7 million from APCD's CAP funding program to allow funding opportunities for the port, maritime tenants, and their service providers. $3 million would be set aside for cargo handling equipment, and $4 million would be set aside for heavy-duty trucks. Tenants and community members have both indicated an interest in providing flexibility in the dollar amounts to be offered between these 2 categories, something the port and APCD will further investigate. The programs would be more flexible than in past grant programs, and to align with APCD board direction and milestone years found in the port's MCAP, funding would include milestone years of 2025 and 2029. The port will also commit $1 million for programs that add incentive funding for carriers to contract with companies to use zero emission trucks. If implementation is successful and initial funding is allocated in other contracts, MOU would then allow an opportunity for additional prioritized funding during the term. The additional funding would be subject to further approval and involvement by Portside community members. Next slide. The governing board directed staff to consider, among other things, developing measurable interim milestones that include the MCAS benchmark years of 2023 to 2030. Thus, we have developed a procedure and milestones to ensure successful MOU implementation. The MOU would require that $3 million in cargo handling equipment grant applications be received no later than the end of 2025. If the milestone is achieved, both APCD and the port would return to the Portside steering committee to seek additional approval for more funding. If the milestone is not achieved, the port and APCD would first evaluate and revise the program to encourage success. Then either reallocate those funds to another project category or pursue other emission reduction projects. This is just one example of what is envisioned in the MOU, but a similar structure would exist for other project categories. Next slide. Infrastructure will be critical to support the anticipated projects that would be applying for incentive funds through this MOU. $40 million has been committed by the port to date for infrastructure improvements, and an additional $7.9 million is committed in the port's fiscal year 2025 budget for further upgrades. The proposed MOU measure will also commit both agencies to pursuing funding opportunities to ensure any infrastructure projects are as shovel-ready as possible should funding become available. Next slide, please. The port and APCD both seek business partners that share the values promoted in the MCAS and STRIP. As a result, we have agreed to the following measure for inclusion in the MOU that will support public participation opportunities for proposed maritime industrial projects within the Portside community, and to evaluate those projects for consistency with applicable MCAS goals and STRIP actions to further promote transparency for such projects. Across the top are green boxes. This is the port's existing process for redevelopment and development projects that require a mitigated negative declaration, or EIR, required by the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. The port has agreed to elements in the white boxes, including early notification of board hearings when a project is first proposed and when it is being considered by the port board, presentations and feedback loops to community groups engaged throughout the process, and socializing information about emission sources and whether the project is consistent with MCAS and STRIP. Staff believes this additional support will not result in delays to the environmental process and will not impede projects already exempt from CEQA. Next slide, please. The fourth draft measure of the MOU is proposed to enhance existing programs to provide emission reductions and other community benefits. The first is the port's voluntary vessel speed reduction program, or VSR, which encourages ocean-going vessels to maintain slower speeds to reduce emissions within miles of the coastline. Ocean-going vessels are one of the largest emission source categories at the port. Thus, even a small reduction in emissions from these vessels could provide significant benefits. Through the MOU, the port and APCD would agree to an increased voluntary participation in the VSR program from 70 to 90% through a new recognition and awards program. The second program is the Maritime Industrial Impact Fund, or MIF, which helps offset the impact of industrial pollution on neighboring communities. The port recently increased contributions for MIF to 4%, and through this MOU has agreed to contribute $500,000 in MIF funding in the first year of the MOU, and would look to make additional MIF contributions in future years pending availability. The third program would specify that the port maintain its green marine certification during the MOU term. Staff believes continued participation in this voluntary program is important to ensure a culture of dialogue between industry and the community is maintained. Next slide, please. We also want to ensure that the port and APCD continue to collaborate for future success. As part of this measure, the port and APCD would agree to conduct outreach and education to the commercial hovercraft and trucking community. We would also work together to provide letters of support as needed for funding applications. We'd also agree to jointly support Sandeg's efforts to complete the Harbor Drive 2.0 concept and advocate for policy that would further encourage zero-emission trucks to be as competitive with diesel trucks operating today. Staff believes a strong collaborative relationship between the two agencies will ensure success in the MOU for other measures and help facilitate solutions if implementation issues arise. Next slide. Last but not least, the sixth draft measure involves robust assessment and reporting provisions to ensure both agencies are held accountable for the measures found within the MOU. This includes an annual assessment by APCD and the port on MOU implementation and progress towards meeting interim and final MOU milestones, as well as emission reductions achieved as a result of MOU implementation. It also includes reporting from the port to APCD, including data collected from the port's new port truck registry system. Reporting this information will ensure this progress can be measured against MCAS targets. Both MOU would also include resolution language to resolve any disputes through progressive remediation. Next slide, please. If successful, the MOU can be accomplished quickly as an initial step to support MCAS and SURF goals. Using CARB methodologies, the MOU has the potential to reduce over 200 tons of combined NOx and VPN over a 10-year period, a large portion of which would come from ocean-going vessels. Reductions in diesel particulate matter would result in localized health benefits for Portside, while reductions in NOx would also result in less ozone formation and health benefits for the region overall. Based on estimates from EPA's COBRA screening tool, staff believes the corresponding emission reductions would equate to over 7,000 fewer incidents of negative health consequences over a 10-year period, such as fewer asthma attacks and lost or restricted workdays due to air pollution. The MOU will ensure prioritized access to funding programs for tenants and service providers for ZAV equipment. It will also enshrine elements that support public participation, promote transparency, and share project information about major future projects in the Portside community. While no agreement is perfect, both agencies believe the proposed measures will benefit both tenants and Portside community members. Next slide, please. In the last 2 weeks, ABCD and Port staff presented these measures to the Portside Steering Committee, working waterfront representatives, and the Maritime Stakeholder Forum. Staff also presented to the Planning and Policy Committee last week, and Port staff presented the MOU framework to the Port Board of Commissioners on Tuesday. Feedback was generally positive, and some of the themes we heard coming out of these meetings included allowing more flexibility to use funding between source categories if needed, working to ensure additional transparency in project review and approval process does not result in delays, and ensuring the community is able to participate and receive information about the MOU and its steps. Port and APCD staff will continue to refine and discuss these aspects in the coming weeks. Should both boards agree, staff will start developing the language for the draft MOU, include a public opportunity to review the language, and would anticipate coming back to the board tentatively in spring of next year. That is all we have today. Thank you for your patience, and we're happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further comments?
Thank you, Chair. We have 3 requests to speak. I'm sorry, we have 3 requests in the room. For Philip Gibbons, you will have 1 minute to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record. I will place the timer on the screen so that you can regulate your time.
All right, 5 minutes of comment. I'll pare it down. Well, thanks, Chair Shu and board members. My name is Phil Gibbons. I'm a program director at the Port and our Climate Sustainability Department. As Nick said, we've been collaborating on this MOU so far for 2 years, and it's a privilege to be forming these preliminary measures that we think will be transformative, bring transformative change to our region. As you saw there on the slide, the Maritime Clean Air Strategy, that's a port document, and the SERP, that's a document. These have been catalysts for change here in San Diego with $125 million committed by a lot of people, not just the port, it's ABCD, state, federal sources, our tenants, et cetera, are investing in cleaner technologies right now and are cleaning the air in and around the Portside community. An MOU between our 2 agencies represents a unique opportunity to strengthen these partnerships, overcome barriers while transitioning to zero emission technologies and accelerate implementation of the MCAS and the SERP. These preliminary measures, as Nick said, have been formed by lots of feedback from folks. The regulatory environment is set, that we have good policy direction in the MCAS and the SERP, and now we need to strengthen these partnerships to achieve the goals that we want to. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kyle Pascala. You'll have 1 minute to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
Thank you. Good afternoon, HCD governing board members. My name is Kyle Haskell. I'm a policy co-director at Environmental Health Coalition. Want to say that we are supportive of the work that APCD staff and Port staff have been doing so far on this MOU. It's going in a great direction because it represents real tangible benefits to air quality that we can see for Portside neighborhoods. I just want to stress 3 points. One, the money that's being allocated, particularly the amounts, 4 million for trucks, 3 million for cargo handling equipment. We think that that amount should remain flexible because we are a little bit further behind on the goal for electric trucks than we are for cargo handling equipment. It's going to be more challenging to do that. So if that funding is flexible, that's helpful. And then lastly, this is an opportunity for more accountability from or direction from this board for more accountability in this document in avoiding direct regulation. We get this right. So increasing the accountability will be key. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker here in the room is Nicholas Polo. You have 1 minute to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
Nicolas Paul with the Environmental Health Coalition. Hello, board members and staff. I wanted to kind of take a moment to kind of echo some of the sentiment of my colleague Kyle earlier. I think community members, including those on the Portside CSC, are particularly interested in investing more funds towards truck electrification. And that makes sense, right? Forklifts and container ship lifts aren't the ones that are idling in front of community members' homes. We know that the port has a lot of progress that we need to make. We're excited about this port MOU. We're generally in support of this investment. But again, I think initially in these first years, more attention should be paid on the sources that are impacting Portside members the most, which are, again, the trucks that are idling in front of their homes or heading through the neighborhood. About 1% of trucks calling to the port cargo terminals as of December of 2023. And so again, just kind of emphasizing that's where our focus and attention should be, at least initially, on this port MOU. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair Stu. That concludes public comment on this item. I would like to take a quick moment just to assist some of our participants that are joining us via Zoom. It looks like our toll-free number on Zoom is not currently working, so I would like to provide you with an alternate number to access the meeting. It is 1-669-449-9121. I apologize, 9171. I'm going to repeat it. 1-669-449-9171. And the webinar ID is 847-7991-2043. Again, the webinar ID is 847-7991-2043. And I would also like to note for the record that Member Martinez has joined the meeting.
Thank you. Goodbye, Marcus.
Yes. So a couple of things. First and foremost, I want to say thank you. I know that when we brought this forward, I think the Environmental Health Coalition was very much interested in the concept of ensuring that the EV adaptation is really taking into consideration our communities in need. So I'm happy to make a motion to support this. And I think this is exactly the direction that we need to be going. The one thing I wanted to also mention is that with my other hat as chair of SANDAC, tomorrow we're going to be having an item before us where we're going to be accepting, I think it's a $3 million grant that specifically focuses on the climate adaptation and environmental justice plan. So what I'm very much interested in is ensuring that all of these entities are talking with each other. The $3 million grant that we're going to be talking about tomorrow is started with the concept of the Tijuana River Valley, specifically around water and air, but also I want to make sure that as we're gathering information and as we're doing this work that and in that MOU that we're able to share that information with SANDAC, because SANDAC will be creating strategies and programs and projects to improve, really think about how do we improve the quality of life as a whole, and really think about the inventory of existing entities that currently have different efforts involved. And I think that this is exactly what we need to be doing. Wearing my CARB hat, right? California Air Resources Board, is how do we get the data that we need? Because I think the zip codes for AB 617 have to be expanded. Right now, there's a lot of conversations that have been had in the scoping plan, et cetera. And I really want to make sure that all of these entities are talking to each other but not just staff, but actually formally. So in that MOU, I'm assuming that this will happen, but the partnership with Sanda, Carp, and everyone else. And as the EPA is really investing funds in all of these programs, so we're figuring out that there's synergy among us. So to me, that's extremely important, and I just want to make sure that I ask for that. But that, like I said, with that, I'm happy to make a motion to support this item.
Motion from Supervisor Vargas, but Member Gomez, you had a comment. Or, I'm sorry, I see if there's a second first. Second by Sanchez. I'll let Member Gomez go ahead.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, for staff. One is in relation to the funding that is called out and is being allocated to specific strategies. I heard the need of wanting to see if it can be flexible. Is that something that can be done? Or is it pretty targeted?
Yeah, it's, those are targets that we had set based on preliminary conversations. So I think there's ample room for flexibility between those categories of cargo handling equipment and insurance.
Okay. That would be something that I would request. That's because I am interested in seeing what is the best strategy that will actually get us to protecting people's health. And I think, as a resident of Barrio Logan, I can say that trucks are pretty significant just in relation to what people see, right, in the community.
And
I'm not saying that that's where all the money should go or vice versa, but it's just something that we're looking at, implementing, just really looking at that.
And I think part of what we wanted to do as well is balance that demand, right? So as we're putting out calls for projects, making sure that we're communicating that to the members of the trucking community so that there is interest and demand, we can fulfill that need. But if we're not seeing that demand, still being able to move forward with the emission reduction projects that we have, shovel ready for lack of to continue moving forward on those emission. But I think the key piece of that is having those conversations and informing the trucking community of what's out there, what's available to them.
Thank you. And then my other one is more on, I think when we started this conversation, I've been on the fence just because it is just an MOU, right? And I continue to do so, but I'll give it the benefit of the doubt and believe that both us and the board are going to do the right thing. But my biggest worry is that this is a 25 to 2031 MOU. So what happens in between if we're not achieving the benchmarks or the reductions? And once again, I'm going back to put people's health.
I
Can you
mean,
speak to that? What are we thinking?
sure. What we've talked about, Nick touched on one of his slides, is if certain benchmarks aren't met, then having discussions and looking at what other options might exist to try to increase or to try to achieve those same emission reductions, in some other fashion. We've also talked about it in terms of potentially a 6-year MOU, but maybe 2-3 year phases of that to kind of reassess at the midpoint and determine, hey, is this achieving the direction? Is this achieving the goal that we want to achieve? Or do we need to think about it? Ultimately, as part of an MOU as well, if certain activities aren't achieved, it is a legal document that, theoretically could be enforceable through the courts. We would hope not to go down that route. But, we've tried to build in alternative options to achieve these emission reductions if the identified milestones aren't.
I think that's going to be very critical how once this gets adopted or signed, that there is that monitoring and that report back to ensure that we are getting there. Just because even though it's 2031 sounds like a long time it's going to be, and it's taken, if I heard you correctly, we've been at this for 2 years, and this is going to start in 2025. So I just feel like time is just moving, and the timeline as to when we're supposed to be achieving this is creeping, and so I just worry about that. Thank you.
Any comments from colleagues? If not, I have to quick list of that. Here. I mentioned these items before during our policy strategy meeting. which is, since this is a 6-year MOU, we had the idea of maybe possibly making the climate action plan, that what this should have to get older, but a lot of things are changing, and we can encourage the what district to have a climate action plan that's up to date, that's super certified, and meets the open plan from CARB, which is a 25% reduction in BNP by 2030. So I think that's important. That is state law, and we should comply with state law with regards to BNP reduction for vehicles as well as trucks. The other item that I wanted to enter into the mix of discussion is transportation demand management strategies, something I'm dealing with at Sandag as well. These are strategies that actually it's a win-win. They don't cost a lot of money. Yeah, you can reduce a lot of pollution, a lot of traffic without having to spend very much money. It's very cost effective. It's used in other parts of the country, and I think that should be part of the mix in terms of how to reduce the emissions in our neighborhood as well as having vehicle plan out there. Those transportation demand strategies can be done for vehicles as well as stuff. And I think if we put that in the mix, I don't expect a lot of it to happen immediately. I think our MOU can be reasonable and work with the Port District to provide steps that moves, but at a reasonable rate and still maybe meet the goals of the MCAS. This board has already discussed in the past the possibility of really asking, let's say, legislature to pursue the MCAS and encourage the Port District to expend additional funding to meet that. The MCAS was a promise with the community. I think we have obligation to try to meet that promise as best we can. If it doesn't meet that promise, we need to take additional steps to move in that direction. So I think that's what I'd like to see us to move in that direction. Otherwise, I really want to applaud the port staff working with APCD staff, giving us some solid stuff. This is actually beyond what my original expectations were. I wanted to have staff working with them on communities being involved because we really can make a move progress here. And I really appreciate the cooperation we're getting on working towards this MOU. Unfortunately, I won't be here when it gets done, but I'm looking forward to that it gets done. I'll be watching that from home next week. With that, there is a motion. There is a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No. Yes, no.
With members Eloy Rivera and Medina absent, that motion passes with those board members who are present voting aye.
Move on to item E4, and I'm going to ask that we move quickly on that item because I really want to get the E3 and I know Mayor Gloria, you have a time certain lead, so I want to make sure you get this. You're getting here as much as you can for E3. And so E4 is proposed administrative code for the County Acquisition Control District. That's what we have instructions to hold testimony.
Thank you, Chair Stu. I would ask any members of the public that are joining us online that wish to address the board on item E4 to please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen to indicate that you wish to speak. If you are joining us via phone, please *9 for keypad to indicate that you wish to speak. All public testimony will be heard at the conclusion of the staff presentation. Thank you.
Staff presentation.
Thank you, Chair Stu and governing board members. I'm going to just give a very quick overview. This item is for your consideration of the administrative code for the San Diego County Air Pollution Control District. And since separating from the county in 2021, this governing board has adopted bylaws and several policies that apply to the district. And over the last year, we've worked with council to put all of these policies into a cohesive administrative code to make it easier for both the board and the public. Next slide, please. This is an overview. Like I said, I'm going to move through these slides pretty quickly, but I just want to hit on the purpose of the code, how it's organized, and call to your attention some notable revisions and additions from what's already been approved by the board. Next slide, please. So again, the purpose was to replace the existing governing board bylaws, and in doing so, we did make we're also proposing to consolidate and update governing board adopted policies, including our social equity statement, language access policy, non-discrimination policy, document retention. A lot of these were adopted in 2022 as kind of individual policies. Again, we're trying to organize everything into a cohesive code. We also want to clearly define the roles, responsibilities, and processes of the governing board, the APCD hearing board, the air pollution control officer, and other offices, and then clarify our ongoing relationship with the County of San Diego. Next slide, please. So the code is organized into several chapters. You can see them there. Attachment A is the adopted conflict of interest code. Again, that's the code that was previously adopted by the board. There's no changes there. And then we did include an attachment into your packet that tracks the existing bylaws to the administrative code so that you can see where the different provisions went. Next slide, please. A couple notable revisions that we want to call to your attention. The first is with the language access policy, and currently the policy requires that for every governing board and hearing board meeting, we will have simultaneous Spanish. The cost for that is approximately $2,000 as we require 2 translators in the room and 2 translators online. We're proposing to make that available upon request. Obviously, if we know there's an item that's going to require simultaneous translation, we would just provide it without the request. And certainly if someone requested it in less than 72 hours, we would try our best to accommodate that. This is the current practice for hearing board meetings, and we think that it's a more efficient use of resources, but it is a change that we want to highlight for you. You know, in the bylaws right now, it's already allowed that someone who requires simultaneous translation would get twice the time in order to allow that to occur. And with several bilingual staff people, we think we would be able to accommodate that even if someone showed up to a meeting. Additionally, proposing to add the compensation amount that this board approved for hearing board members at your meeting in June. The reason that we're going to propose to add it to our administrative code is after your board voted in June to increase that compensation. The county informed us they would prefer to not have a hearing board reflected in their compensation ordinance, since they're not technically county employees. So we would propose to just include it here in the code, which is within the authority of your board. Next, we've also proposed a change to the hearing board procedures, which would allow for removal of a member after multiple unexcused absences. And this is something where you may recall come to your board on a couple of occasions to remove members. This would allow for a more streamlined removal of them. And then there's a couple of additional minor revisions, cleanup revisions that were made after this was presented to the Planning and Policy Committee last night. Next slide, please. So you'll see that we've also added quite a bit of material here. Section 1.4 defines our ongoing relationship with county policies. At a broad level, we're maintaining the applicability of policies that relate to personnel issues and to county services that we continue to procure. As you'll recall, all APCD employees remain county employees, and so all those personnel policies still apply. Next is the reservation of authorities by the governing board in section 1.6. It defines the authority that the governing board specifically reserves to itself and authorizes remaining authority for the APCO. We have also added a reference to the Planning and Policy Committee and a fiscal chapter to clarify our annual budget and audit requirements, as well as incorporate the board approved reserve policy, which was adopted with our first budget, as well as our cost recovery policy. And we've also established limits for APTO procurement, contracting, and sole source authority. And then next slide, please. We've got a added section related to administration, which incorporates requirements to comply with the California Public Records Act, document retention schedule, and specifies electronic notice and claims procedures, as well as references CEQA guidelines, which we'll be bringing to your board for adoption in November of this year. And then finally, chapter 6 is related to personnel and again clarifies the status of our employees as county employees and documents ethics requirements and specifies positions required to take state mandated ethics training. Next slide, please. So that is a very quick overview of the administrative code that we're proposing. And our request today is that you approve the code as we proposed. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Let's go on to public comments on item E4.
Thank you, Chair. We have received no request to speak on this item.
Before I take the motion, I just want to note that Member Medina is not here, but during the policy and strategy meeting, credit for diving into this and giving comments and making sure that these amendments were on track and doing well. With that, I'll take a motion to approve the school supervisor Vargas.
Question.
Yes.
So, as it relates to the translation, and I don't want to put words in mayor's mouth, but one of the changes that took place in terms of APCD being an independent entity is that we wanted to make sure that we were much more available for community, and we have an EJC, et cetera, et cetera. As the person who is often in the room, the only Spanish speaker, having been a former staffer and having being asked to translate for folks, I have a really hard time with saying that an entity is going to use that as a way we translate documents. It's an actual job, it is an actual position. And as much as all of us bilingual, bicultural folks do it, we do it because we want to help people. But there's a lot lost in translation. At SANDAG, at the Board of Supervisors, we have one translator, and they're available for both, the folks on Zoom and the folks who are present, and it works. So I'm not sure why we would need 4 people total, and I don't want to get in, I don't want to micromanage any of that work, but I am very much opposed. I'm going to support the motion and all of that, but I'm very much opposed to taking that component out because I really do believe that that's absolutely necessary, especially for a community that has, large population of Spanish speakers and the largest population of folks impacted by environmental injustices in this county are Latinos who don't speak English. And so I want to make sure that that component is in there, and I'm going to ask that if I can make a motion to support this, and if you want to go back and work with the different entities and see if something like that could be adopted, then I can, otherwise we can take that item.
We could, it's however you would like to address it.
So I'll just remove that part of that.
Okay.
And then we can take it.
Another option could be that we provide for in-person translation and then allow for some form of connection to that online, or maybe, like you say, connect with other agencies to identify how. So, absolutely.
Very, very important. And then the other piece is, I think, as we're developing as an entity, right? So the chair for 2 years, and then here we are now, you've done an exceptional job in being an independent entity. I just want to make sure, we're going to have a conversation during item 3 around sort of roles and responsibilities, and really sort of the responsibility of APCD to be the one that is actually measuring our air pollution. And to me, that's extremely important because I think the county still has a lot of ties with APCD as it relates to a lot of the staffing and the support, right? And county employees. But I want to make sure that we're very clear and it's clean about when there is an issue of air quality, it is APCD's responsibility to make sure that they are measuring air quality, et cetera, et cetera, and then working in tandem with our public health department to make sure that if there are any challenges or needs that happens. But I want to figure out how that is. I'm not sure that it's as explicit here, but I want to make sure that it's in our administrative work that we're doing as we move forward, that's something that's very important and very clear.
Absolutely.
All All right, and with that, I'm happy to make the motion with the changes.
So I'll hand up to Vice Chair Gloria. Just for clarification, does that include, the, that change with regards to the 72 hours spent translating?
Yes,
Okay, and I understand, you know, even if someone comes in at the last minute, we would make a good faith effort to have a trained translator, present. I think that's,
yeah, so my goal is that you actually make it part of the actual meeting. So if you go to a Board of Supervisors meeting, even actual CARB has a minutes there at all times, because we make sure we created that process and,
Yeah.
and
and you're noted with few examples of how other entities do it, and they have good translators. I mean, Sandex translator Carlos does a pretty good job. So I think we don't have to look very hard to figure out how to do it well. I think we can do that, and if it takes fewer people, maybe we can save some costs as well. So I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Abstentions?
Thank you.
What about-
With members Elo, Rivera, and Medina absent, that motion passes with all board members who are present voting aye. Before we move into the next item, I want to ensure that everyone has access and is able to hear the item online. So I'm going to go over the Zoom access again, as well as the phone number. So we are going into item E3, which is related or which concerns the Tijuana River Valley complaint update. The phone number to access the meeting via Zoom is 669-444-9171. Again, the phone number is 669-444-9171. The webinar ID is 847-7991-2043. Again, that number for the webinar ID is 847-7991-2043. The link for Zoom to access this meeting is https://sd/ORG.ZOOM.us/847-991-2043. Again, the link is https://sd/APCD-OOM.us/77991-2043. This information can also be found on our webpage, SDAPCD.org, under the governing board agendas and minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me read item E3 real quickly. Update on investigation into the odor complaints in the community and authorization for air pollution control officer to enter into agreement with the county of San Diego to supplement its air purifier pilot program. Before we have a report from Anya local on this, I want to make a few quick statements on this issue. This is an emergency, a critical issue affecting many people, huge community, and it's been going on for a long time. And as we enter into discussion, receive the public testimony, receive the comments and our discussion, I want to make sure the atmosphere that we create is one that assumes that everyone is here to do good and trying their best to address this issue and to relieve the community of this real problem of air pollution that's affecting them, has been affecting them for a long time, and which may continue to do so given the circumstances we're under. I think that's important. we need people to work together, and we should presume that all of us are trying to do our best to do so. With that, I know the APCD staff has been working a lot overtime over the weekend and into the evening, working on this issue. And I want to give that acknowledgement up front as we go into it. But please, let's all keep that in mind. All of us, board members and community, I think, are trying to do the best we can, and we should presume that as we go forward. With that, let's have a staff presentation.
Before we move to the staff presentation, I will provide the public testimony instructions. For those members that are joining us via teleconference, please use the instructions that are provided on your screen. You may indicate that you wish to speak on this item by using the raise hand feature at the bottom of the Zoom screen. If you are joining us via telephone, please press star nine, to indicate that you wish to speak on this item. Again, please raise your hand at this time. All public testimony will be heard at the conclusion of the staff presentation.
Thank you. Let's go ahead with the staff presentation.
Chair Shu and other board members. This item highlights the San Diego Air Pollution Control District's urgent and ongoing investigation into the severe odors that have been drastically impacting South Bay communities for many years. It also presents recommendations designed to provide some relief to those affected. Addressing any air quality impacts resulting from this environmental crisis is a top priority at SDAPCD. The combination of significant transboundary sewage flows and deficient wastewater treatment infrastructure managed by the International Boundary and Water Commission has created an environmental crisis affecting air, water, and soil quality. It's important to note and elevate that more data is not necessary to understand the severity of this environmental crisis. SDAPCD has already documented air quality violations and taken enforcement actions against IBWC and its contractor Veolia. Yet we recognize that collecting and sharing robust monitoring data with public health experts is also critical in order to communicate any potential health impacts to the affected communities. With the support of this board, SDAPCD remains fully committed to addressing any air quality impacts through continuous monitoring and enforcement of regulations. However, it's important to note that this crisis extends far beyond air quality concerns, with untreated sewage having broader, more far-reaching impacts. At this time, SDAPCD is not aware of any data suggesting an imminent threat to life or health, but the immediate focus must continue to be on the critical upgrades required at IBWC's wastewater treatment facility and associated infrastructure to resolve these ongoing issues and prevent further harm. In today's presentation, we will be outlining our ongoing enforcement investigation and efforts, also discussing our ongoing monitoring in the area, as well as addressing potential ways to supplement our the county's air purifier pilot program. I'm joined today by Chief of Compliance, William Jacks, and Chief of Monitoring, Dr. David Soderman, who will provide updates on our ongoing odor investigation, as well as our air quality monitoring efforts around the Tijuana River Valley. With that, I will turn it over to William.
Thank you, Paula. Good afternoon, board members and members of the public. Next slide, please. Since July 19th, 2024, we've received nearly 2,000 odor complaints from South Bay communities. This is the highest number of complaints we have ever received regarding the source. For additional context, for the past several years, we received on average a total of 800 complaints per year. This slide shows some of the concerns reported by the communities impacted by these odors. We want to acknowledge that the conditions causing these concerns are unacceptable. Nobody should be exposed to these types of odors. We have documented violations of local and state air quality regulations, which resulted in enforcement actions against International Boundary and Water Commission, or IBWC, and their contractor, Veolia. We will continue to enforce our laws to the full extent of our jurisdiction. Next slide, please. This slide highlights our complaint mapping tool available on our website. This slide shows all air quality complaints received since last July, most of which are related to sewage odors, and the locations where the public has reported strong odors, both within the community and around the Tijuana River. We've included a QR code linking to this tool, which provides a valuable resource for monitoring ongoing odor investigations. Our team continues to conduct field surveillance, documenting odors using human sensory detection. This method is necessary to determine if there is a public nuisance in accordance with local and state regulations and aligns with what the public is experiencing. The human nose can detect hydrogen sulfide at concentrations much lower than most instruments can measure. Next slide, please. This slide provides an overview of the operations conducted by the International Boundary and Watery Commission and their contractor, Veolia. IBWC is part of the federal government, and they own and operate the South Bay International Wastewater Treatment Plant and the associated infrastructure, including pump stations and collectors in the United States. After we started receiving odor complaints in July, we learned that the Hollister pump station became inoperative in June. The records obtained from IBWC shows that proper maintenance has not been conducted. Because the Hollister pump station is not in operation, the Goat Canyon pump station also had to shut down as it directs flows to the Hollister pump station. In summary, the pump stations are offline during repairs, but transboundary flows continue at the Smuggler's Gulch and Goat Canyon collectors, contributing to additional untreated transboundary flows in the Tijuana River and an increase in odors resulting in public nuisance. Next slide, please. Another critical problem is that the sewage is being directed to the Tijuana River and not being treated by IBWC. This slide shows data published by IBWC regarding the amount of untreated flow going to the Tijuana River. According to IBWC, earlier this month, there were about 90 million gallons of untreated flows per day going to the river, but there should not be any flows going into the river. IBWC reported it is monitoring the flows and its data is available to the public. The QR code provides access to this data. Next slide, please. On July 29th, 2024, SDAPCD issued a notice of violation to IBWC and their contractor, Veolia, for creating a public nuisance. Subsequently, on August 30th, 2024, SDAPCD issued another notice of violation to IBWC and its contractor, Veolia, since we have not been able to document compliance with public nuisance regulations. The notices of violations were issued because we have been documenting strong odors that negatively impact communities, which is a public nuisance and a violation of SDAPCD's Rule 51 and state law. While this is still an ongoing investigation, we have determined that the public nuisance is primarily due to a combination of outdated infrastructure and inadequate maintenance, both of which fall under the responsibility of the IBWC and Veolia. This is the QR code for a web page that was specifically created to provide transparent and timely updates on ongoing response into these public nuisance odors impacting the South Bay. Given the severity and continuing nature of the situation, the SDAPCD may seek an order of an abatement from the District Hearing Board pursuant to the California Health and Safety Code section 42451. An abatement order is a legal directive requiring an entity to stop or reduce activities that are causing or contributing to air pollution violations. These orders are typically issued when a source of pollution is in violation of air quality regulations or poses a threat to public health and the environment. The purpose of an abatement order is to ensure that the entity takes immediate corrective actions to bring its operations into compliance with air quality standards. It may be issued after violations, such as exceeding emission limits, causing a public nuisance, like strong odors, or failing to comply with existing permits. I'll now pass it to David Soderman, the Chief of Monitoring and Technical Services.
Next slide, please. Thank you, William. Good afternoon, board members and members of the public. My name is David Soderman, Chief of the Monitoring and Technical Services Division, and I will provide an update on our monitoring efforts related to the Tijuana River Valley. The district was able to secure an EPA grant to procure 6 AQ mesh sensors and 1 Teledyne T101 analyzer to primarily track hydrogen sulfide levels over time, which is the main odorous component of untreated sewage in and around the Tijuana River Valley. The AQ mesh sensors operate on a solar battery system, which allows us to deploy them where we don't have access to power, and they are connected to a cellular network to transmit data 24/7. The Teledyne T101 analyzer will be used as a reference instrument to apply any needed to the sensor data and will be deployed in San Isidro. Both instruments can operate 24/7 and provide hourly measurements. The original goal of this project was for trend analysis to better inform the community of odor patterns related to meteorological conditions. However, as the reported intensity and frequency increased over the summer, the district shifted the design of the study and has greatly accelerated the process to provide more robust quantitative data to inform public health officials. Next slide, please. This map shows the location of where we are currently monitoring. Currently monitoring in blue and plan to monitor in orange. Initially, all 6 sensors were deployed at the San Diego Fire Station number 29 in San Isidro for testing and to be able to establish how different measurements were, to establish how different the measurements were from all the different sensors and how well they track one another. At this time, we have also deployed some of the sensors to the Imperial Beach Pier, the Tijuana River Valley Campground, and the International Wastewater Treatment Plant. We are also nearly finished with procuring the necessary infrastructure to deploy one at the Imperial Beach City Hall / Fire Station location and are researching a potential location in the community of Nestor. Next slide, please. Before I share some of our preliminary data, I would like to point out that there are a number of standards and reference levels for hydrogen sulfide. The California Air Resources Board, or CARB, and the California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment Standard is based on a 1-hour average level set at 30 parts per billion. The National Institute of Occupational Safety and Hazard has set the immediate dangerous to health or life level at 100 parts per million, or which is equal to 100,000 parts per billion. We are in communications with the CDC Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, the California Department of Public Health, and the County of San Diego, and we have provided our preliminary data to them and will continue to do so to get assistance in analyzing the data and potential impacts to the community. While hydrogen sulfide may cause adverse health effects such as headache and nausea, based on the data available to us at this time have we not seen any levels that would approach the NIOSH standard of 100,000 parts per billion, the level at which there's immediate threat to life. However, the current levels continue to negatively impact people's quality of life and the affected communities. Next slide, please. This graph displays the preliminary data from one of our sensors from the time it was deployed at the San Diego Fire Station number 29 in San Isidro. All the sensors show the same trend. We are seeing the following trends in the data so far. We are seeing higher concentrations at night throughout the nighttime hours and lower concentrations during the day. The concentrations in the last 3 months are higher than the preceding several months. And number 3, the levels this past weekend are the highest levels we've seen in the nearly 11 months of collecting data. Now I'll turn over the rest of the presentation to Paula.
Thank you, David. So next slide, please. So now we'd like to briefly discuss how portable air purifiers can help mitigate odors by filtering out airborne contaminants that contribute to odors. While we recognize that portable air purifiers are not a solution to the broader environmental crisis, they can offer temporary relief by improving indoor air quality in affected communities. Next slide, please. The US EPA has committed $100,000 in grant funding to SDAPCD to support deploying indoor air purifiers to the community affected by sewage odors to help provide some temporary relief. In response to the ongoing Tijuana River Valley sewage crisis, in June 2024, the County Board of Supervisors allocated $100,000 in funding to provide free air purifiers to homes in areas affected by ambient odors. In August 2024, the county coordinated registrations throughout the eligible area, as shown on the slide, and a randomized drawing from the registration pool to identify participants in the pilot program. SDAPCD has identified an opportunity to partner with the County of San Diego through their existing air purifier pilot program to help deploy additional air purifiers as quickly as possible. We are seeking your board's approval to enter into an agreement to supplement the county's program with EPA grant funding. This partnership with the county would allow us to more expeditiously deploy the indoor air filters to the affected community. Next slide, please. In terms of next steps, our top priority is to keep the public well informed. We will maintain complete transparency regarding the scale of this issue and the resources required to address it. As mentioned earlier, we've created a webpage that will be regularly updated with the latest information on the compliance investigation. We're also working on establishing an email distribution list that interested parties can sign up for to receive the latest updates. We will also continue to coordinate with our regional, state, and federal partners to ensure our communities stay informed about air quality issues. Later this month, we will be meeting with IBWC representatives to discuss the outstanding notices of violations and better understand the steps they're taking to comply with air quality regulations. Based on the outcome of that discussion, we will assess and determine the appropriate next steps for enforcement. We will also continue collaborating with other agencies, including the Regional Water Quality Control Board, the County of San Diego, the California Air Resources Board, EPA, IBWC, and others, all of which have a role in addressing this issue. As previously mentioned, this is a significant environmental issue that extends well beyond air quality concerns. Therefore, closely working with other agencies is essential. Additionally, we will continue to seek additional funding opportunities with these partner agencies to strengthen odor relief efforts in the affected communities. Regardless of whether we continue to receive air quality complaints, our compliance investigations will persist. Once we document a violation, our standard procedure is to continue the investigation until we verify compliance. Our inspectors are on the ground in the impacted communities multiple days per week, around the clock, to document any ongoing impacts. Once compliance is achieved, we will evaluate and initiate settlement discussions. Finally, we will continue sharing our monitoring data with public health experts and will seek to partner with appropriate public health agencies to help us evaluate and communicate any potential health impacts to the affected communities. We have reached out to our partners at the South Coast Air Quality Management District and CAR to seek support in expanding our monitoring efforts. And we are currently coordinating with these agencies to get additional monitoring, such as a mobile monitoring van, which is already in the area today. Next slide, please. The requested action today is to authorize the Air Pollution Control Officer to enter into an agreement with the County of San Diego to supplement its air purifier pilot program. This concludes our presentation, and we are available to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. We have about 16 public commenters. And some other live discussions probably from one. I want to go ahead and see if we can move to the comments first, so we get some additional input from the public. Let them give us their input before we start the discussion. So let's go ahead and start with public comment.
Thank you, Chair Chu. There are 10 members of the public here in the chamber that wish to address the board on this item and 6 currently online. I will call for Riley Harris. You will have 1 minute to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
My name is Arely Perez. I'm here speaking on behalf of myself and my experience as a community member of the Tijuana River Valley. I'm also employed in one of the local farms and education centers called Wild Willow Farm. I'm also here to speak on behalf of the More Than Human Beings. Just today, I welcome a group of students from Cerro Academy. And what I teach them when they come down to the farm is respect for the more than human world, for the birds, for the coyotes, for the hawks, for the butterflies. And so today I speak on behalf of them because they don't often get a voice in these types of meetings. And I also speak on behalf of my staff, the people that I work with that are not only out there every day growing food for the community, but are exposing their bodies potentially to things that we don't know about. And we would really appreciate more support and understanding how the air quality in our specific of the River Valley impacts not only ourselves as staff, but the people that we welcome onto the farm. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker is Ramon Torres. You will have 1 minute to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Ramon Chaires. I represent an organization named Un Mar de Colores, as well as a longtime resident of that entire river valley. At some point or another, I've lived in San Isidro, Nestor, and Imperial Beach. I've spent a lot of time on that river valley. Right now, my main concern is what's happening at night. Okay, so I know that the county has run some tests today, which is great. We need to know what's happening at night. Our residents are sleeping about 100 to 200 yards away from some of the hot spots in that area. And so we need to know exactly what those levels are. I know some of the sensors that they've been using are cross sensitive, so that cyanide and hydrogen sulfide are getting mixed up. And so I think what we need right now is the same kind of effort that we're putting into water quality in the ocean, in the air. We need to keep monitoring that because the one thing that our researchers have found is that when the conditions are right in that river, it could be deadly. So let's make sure that we're doing the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mitch McKay. You have 1 minute to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mitch McKay. I am the Mayor Pro Tem from the city of Imperial Beach. We call it Ground Zero. First of all, I want to thank Member Bush and Chair Shu for coming out this morning and spending some time in our neighborhood to live our experience. And I encourage you all to take time and talk to these gentlemen. They can relay to you the physical changes that happen, what you feel, what you smell, what you breathe. I'm just urging you guys to communicate between each other and pushing forward for the actions that you guys are willing to take. I think there's more needed, but I'm just going to encourage everybody to do the best job they can with the information that's coming forward. And thank you for the time today. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Omar Arezia.
All right.
You'll have 1 minute to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
Greetings, representatives. Thank you for the time to speak. My name is Omar Araiza. I'm here representing the South Bay, Nestor, Otay, Edgar Highlands. I grew up there. Swam in the Imperial Beach surfing, swam in the dirty water that had foam and floating when I was 16. Luckily, nothing happened. I come today really more to give a perspective on, as a new business owner in the local area, I've actually had to close down because I was a street vendor selling coffee. And due to the air quality control, I didn't want my community to get sick. That was my first priority. And now I'm here today really to more inform you about, from a firefighter perspective. I was a firefighter in my early years. Over 10 years experience. And so I looked up yesterday just the ERG, the Emergency Response Guide, which is kind of the firefighter's dummy guide to toxicity and how to protect, the local community when it comes to air and which way it flows, which way it comes in and out. So if you look up
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lauren Casada. You will have 1 minute to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
Good afternoon, Chair Shu and members of the APCD Governing Board. My name is Lauren Stars. I'm here on behalf of the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce and our over 2,200 member businesses and 300,000 jobs regionally. Our mission is to make the San Diego the best place to live and work, and that's why we're involved with the Tijuana River Pollution Task Force led by Imperial Beach Mayor Paloma SDA. As a stakeholder deeply invested in the economic vitality of San Diego and the Tijuana binational region, the Chamber has been a long-time partner in the fight to repair the South Bay International Wastewater Treatment Plant and remains committed to ensuring the Tijuana River Valley pollution crisis is addressed at all levels of government through legislation, funding, and emergency procedures. I want to say thank you for taking the time to address this emergency and consider APCD's role in solving it. It's impacting the health and well-being of South County residents and having millions of dollars of impacts on local businesses like we just heard. We are so grateful to now have more data showing the dire condition of the Tijuana River thanks to the research team at UC San Diego led by Dr. Prather, at San Diego State University, the County of San Diego's own research championed by Chair Nora Vargas, and the air that you just shared. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Bud Wynn. You will have 1 minute to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Dee Nguyen. I'm actually the chair of the AAP California State Government Affairs Committee on Environmental Health and Climate Change. I'm here as a person, just as a doctor. I changed my coat and it's clean. It does not have the logo of the place I work. So I just want to let you know that I'm a community pediatrician. I do a lot of legislative work, but I actually am from Bonita and I practice in that area. And so Berry Elementary, Nesterlinger Academy, Southwest, Mar Vista, those are our schools and our kids. And so I'm sorry, I haven't let you guys know because we're working, we're all volunteer pediatricians and what we've seen is not good. I have a letter that I sent to everyone, including the governor and the county public health and whatnot, with the signature of now 25 pediatricians who work in the South Bay. And what we're seeing is pneumonia. What we're seeing is conjunctivitis. We're really confused because there's a lot of asthma. And so just please, air purifiers are important. We don't know what the effects will be on the neurodevelopment of these kids. They're already over and autism and ADHD. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker is Paula Granados. You will have 1 minute to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
Good afternoon. I'm Paula Sigler Granados, and I am an associate professor at San Diego State University in the School of Public Health, Division Head of our Environmental Health Division. To read my statement. As a scientist and professor of public health working in the Tijuana River Valley and Imperial Beach, I've seen firsthand the devastating impact of millions of gallons of raw sewage and industrial wastewater going through our communities every day. I started working in the same area 20 years ago, and I'm sad to say I'm back here doing it again today. This egregious toxic and dangerous pollution contaminates our air, water, and soil, disproportionately affects our communities. We've heard from hundreds of residents. At night, skin rashes, noxious fumes in their homes at night. They can't use their CPAP machines. I was at the point where I just vomited over the bridge while I was taking soil samples today with my students because the fumes overwhelmed me. People live in this community. I would encourage our community health and APCD to look into chronic levels of exposures to contaminants such as hydrogen sulfide. There are several studies that show negative health consequences in communities, especially among children. We cannot use only NIOSH standards for hydrogen sulfide to adjust the air. The air is not healthy. This is an environmental justice.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kimberly Prather. You will have 1 minute to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
Hello, good to see you, board. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I'm Kim Prather. I'm a professor at UC San Diego. We've been in South Bay for a few weeks, trying to help with this problem. We've interacted majorly with the community. It's basically, we came to continue studies we've been doing since 2017. We got had to pivot as the odor complaints were coming in. So now we're trying to help with that. We've identified a hot spot. We're the ones that were able to show that the levels that are supposed to be that are supposed to be 30 ppb can get up to as high as 4,000 ppb at night. That's why that people are consistent. Makes the residents feel good that we're validating what they're seeing. And so I just want to give you information hot off the press. One of the things we found a hot spot, and that's affecting the Nestor community, and we're mapping all that out now. But when they when they slowed down the river, our hypothesis was that would make things better. Last night, those fell to less than 100. Still too high, but that's good news. There are ways to fix it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ben Rico. You have 1 minute to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
Thank you, Board. My name is Ben Rico. I'm a researcher at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography at the UC San Diego, working with Kim Prather. And I'm leading our gas phase measurements down there during our campaign, deeply embedded in the Nestor community. Just here to answer questions and support Kim.
Thank you. Our last speaker here in the chamber is Nicholas Gold. You will have 1 minute to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
Nicolas Baud with the Environmental Health Coalition. The Tijuana River Valley is a little bit outside of the communities that EHC works in. However, we wanted to kind of speak in solidarity with the other environmental justice communities impacted in the border region. We're in support of the agreement to provide the air purifiers into these communities. We have similar programs in the Fiery Logan community that have been successful. We think you can provide some relief for some of these residents. However, I think $160,000 isn't enough, right? We think all community members that are impacted deserve to see some relief. And so we hope that, as we're speaking to influential people here in the room, that there's ways that we can find and draw more funding to expand this program even more. And so, again, in solidarity with these other community members that are in.
Thank you. To our virtual speakers. Our first speaker is Milligram Line of Alejandro. You will have 1 minute to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
Thank you. My name is Alejandro Amador from Casa Familiar. For the past couple of years, we have witnessed firsthand down here in San Isidro, the crisis at the Tijuana River Valley rapidly worsen to a critical point that requires immediate action. Our people and our environment are getting sick, and we're facing the repercussions of decades of neglect towards the border region. So obviously we support the request for this action, and hopefully it includes blanket wording that allows future potential funding to flow more efficiently into the program, and not just this EPA one, but all possible funding sources like the state cap and trade and other incentive funding. However, even though we can agree that the funding for this immediate relief is vital, let's remember that it is only a Band-Aid. I urge APCD to pressure the state of California into declaring a state of emergency. We need to ensure that all avenues are being used to push this goal forward. The water treatment plant must be fixed immediately. Our health and the health of our community cannot wait any longer. So I hope APCD is accessing all ways it can be a leader in this solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Karen Rhodes. Karen Rhodes, you will have 1 minute to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Kieran Rhodes. Thank you. I'm an advocacy intern with the San Diego Pediatricians for Clean Air, and I have a certificate from the Yale School of Public Health Climate Change and Health program. I just wanted to talk a little bit about how children have higher risks from exposure to hydrogen sulfide and hydrogen cyanide. Relative to their body size, children breathe and drink more than adults. Their metabolisms are faster, and their lung surface area to body weight ratio is higher. So children process higher doses of toxins than adults in the same areas. Hydrogen sulfide is also denser than air, so it sinks to the ground. So children may be exposed to higher concentrations just because of their shorter stature. And children also exhibit behaviors that put them at higher risk, like spending time playing outside, breathing heavily, crawling, laying down where hydrogen sulfide concentrations are highest. And this all makes the presence of hydrogen sulfide and hydrogen cyanide a critical health issue, even in concentrations that might be innocuous to adults. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sarah Davidson. You may begin by stating your name for the record. You have 1 minute to address the board.
Good afternoon, Sarah Davidson with the Clean Border Water Now program at Surfrider Foundation. Thank you, board members, for the opportunity to comment. We also appreciate the leadership and persistence of IB Mayor Aguirre, Dr. Prather from UCSD, and Dr. Stigler-Granados from SDSU, and others seeking to understand the serious public health impacts resulting from transboundary pollution in the Tijuana River Valley. All data collected from these academic experts at reputable institutions tells us that there are dangerous levels of hydrogen sulfide and other gases in the area. This is in alignment with the numerous reported headaches, gastrointestinal issues, diarrhea, and other alarming health outcomes experienced by frontline communities. This is without a doubt the single most significant public health and environmental justice emergency in our county right now. You can imagine the widespread shock and disappointment to learn on Tuesday that the county is not basing their decisions on this data that has been collected over several weeks, but instead, after only 2 samplings, has determined that there is no credible health risk to the public. This is concerning. Oh, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kate Tillman. Kate Tillman, you will have 1 minute to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
Hello, this is Kate Tillman. As a woman of science, I was very concerned to hear that a conclusion was made by an elected official on the safety of the air that my children are breathing, just based upon 2 data collections, one in the daytime and one at nighttime. I have been submitting pollution complaints in regards to around 12:15, 12:30 at night. Last night, which my throat was burning and I was like, I'm not sick. What's going on? And I was like, I'm going to check the air quality in IB, and it said poor. And I was like, well, that's not surprising. Oh, wait, I only got a minute. My children maxed out their absences. We've only lived here 2 years. In New York, they didn't miss any days. Maxed out 2 years that are allowed for them since moving here. I have the blurry vision from my children. I get having conjunctivitis for 2 months. You can see the scar tissue on my eye. I'll be going to a eye doctor to get more about that. Basically, a basic understanding of science in the water cycle and watersheds. What you put in the water, it gets in the environment, in the air. It's 4th grade science, you guys. The lack of, I'm not trying to be rude. It's just, I used to teach environmental education to 4th graders, and they understand. If you're allowing all the toxic chemicals to be dumped in the water, there's going to be an effect on all life in the area. Okay, so I'm just calling, can't stop testing, guys. Let's see the passion, okay? Don't quit. Oh, do I still have some time? I thought it beeped at me, sorry. Honestly, if you're an elected official and you are enraged about the environment and children's health being put at risk, please step down and let those of us that care, we will step in and fight until this is taken care of once and for all, because honestly, what is the benefit of not going to the source and just fixing it once and for all?
Ms. Tillman, I think the buzzer did sound. I don't think we heard it here, but I can see it on Zoom. But thank you for your comments. Our next speaker does not have a name listed, so I'll use the last 4 digits of their phone number, 4382. Caller 4382. Please state your name for the record. You may begin. You have 1 minute to address the board.
Hello, can you hear me now? Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, my name's Renee. My name's Renee Caesar, and this is more of just my experience. I'm a new homeowner in the Chula Vista area. I actually have a home that I just purchased last year in October, off of J and Marina Parkway. So I really had a question. I heard that they are tracking the air. There's air trackers that have been placed in strategic points. Are there any in this area, in the J Street Marina Parkway area? Because this summer I have experienced a reoccurring smell that everybody's talking about, this air pollution, and it's really bad, and it's not, and I'm not ground zero. I'm really, I think, a good distance away. So is Chula Vista incorporated in the regions that are being, monitored? Hello?
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Is there an answer?
Hello? Thank you. Our next speaker is Courtney Volkowski. You will have 1 minute to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
Thank you, honorable members of the APDC board. This is Courtney Baltiski with the YMCA of San Diego County, where we nurture a healthy spirit-minded body so all can thrive. This is our mission, and this is why we are involved in this issue. We thank you for your shared commitment here. And we believe that there are best intentions that have been described in the meeting today. And we know that more needs to be done. Along with efficient air purifiers for all, we ask for you to increase the number of sensors and monitors in the Tijuana River Valley to be fully calibrated and place them in the same areas as the researchers at Scripps and SDSU, where there are identified hotspots. We also ask you to establish ongoing monitoring and make the information publicly available, much like the county does with the Beach Water Quality Program. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Vanessa Forsythe. You have 1 minute to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Vanessa Forsythe, and I am a school nurse concerned about the impact on the health of the children at school in this area. When we talk about headaches, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, these are all things that are going to impact children's ability to attend school and to learn even when they're there in these conditions. Recently, this governor ended funding to CalShape, which had funding for school districts to get HVAC and air purifiers. We need air purifiers located at the schools. We need monitoring of the air quality at the schools. This is a big problem that is concerning such a large amount of our population, particularly the children. Please act.
Thank you. Our last speaker also will be called by the last 4 digits of their phone number, 5459. Caller 5459. You have 1 minute to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
My name is John Bodorf with Clean Earth for Kids.org. I just wanted to throw in, as the previous caller talked about, this is very, very toxic air, and there's a lot of people in that area, particularly children. And the APCD needs to address that as quickly as possible. Not only getting air quality monitoring in there, but also addressing the root cause. These gases need to be addressed. The sewage needs to be addressed. And in the meantime, people need air purifiers. They need proper HVAC and filtering to get them clean air. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Seeing no additional hands raised online and there are no additional requests to speak that have been submitted, that concludes public testimony on this item.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank all the comments. Mayor Gloria, I understand you have some comments. As we go forward, I know many of you may have ideas on making some motions and some actions. And I'm going to ask the help of the clerk, actually, it's her request, that we have some discussion, and then whenever we're really ready, we provide, taking into considerations of comments and that particular item, then provide verbiage on motions that want to be made, as well as if we can combine items with one motion, that's okay. If we're not, that's okay. But let's make it easy for ourselves as well as our clerk as we go forward, and make sure we have a good discussion amongst us as well. Gloria, I want you to couple those presentations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for running this meeting so efficiently so that we can get public testimony on this most important issues. I want to say from the outset, this situation is absolutely and we have collected this in Imperial Beach, San Diego, the county. This board have been working on this issue for far too long. The fact is, this requires a binational approach with hundreds of millions of dollars to actually get to the root cause of the problem. The question before this board today is, can we do everything we possibly can to try and improve the quality of life of the residents who are suffering in South San Diego County? And the answer, I believe, today will be yes. It is admittedly a modest gesture in the grand scheme of all that is necessary. But when all of us say that we're doing everything we can to fix this problem, this would be proof that we will be doing everything we can to fix this problem. I want to note that this board first discussed this issue, I believe, last December. And since that time, the city of San Diego has been pleased to host one of the air monitors on a piece of property that we had while the rest of the network was distributed. In the meantime, I want to assure my there's not been a single time that I've been to the White House, met with our governor, or traveled to Mexico City and not brought up this issue and the urgency of getting it solved. I will be in Mexico City next month to repeat that to the new president and her administration in order to try and get the root cause of this problem resolved. In the meantime, for today, I'd asked the staff. My understanding is the county has previously allocated $100,000. I believe that was mentioned. How many air purifiers does that purchase?
Approximately 400.
No. And then with regard to the proposed action of another 160,000, that don't make me do math, but we're talking 550, 600,
600 more.
So that'd be 1,000. Do we, that interest list that was mentioned, do we know how many folks are on the interest list?
Yeah. This is, yeah. So I think it's really important to mention, Mayor, that, so I think it's now 100,000 that's coming from the EPA, not 160.
That's
So
correct.
I want to make sure that that's clarified, which is why whatever motion we talk about today has to be expanded, because the goal is to try to get additional dollars, and working with the governor. We sent out a letter today to the governor so that he can support the request that we've made to CARB, separate than the EPA. So we have the need in that community. It's not just obviously the need from Imperial Beach, but also Nestor and San Isidro. And based on the data that we've seen, we are going to need at least 10,000 air purifiers, right? So when I introduced that as a board, when we introduced, it was really about let's do this pilot program to see if it could be impactful, and that way we can get additional dollars. $100,000, it's about $200 per air purifier. What people are getting is a filter, the actual filter, the air purifier, and then 2 replacement filters because people need to replace it. And then I want to make sure we know that we know how it also impacts people's electricity bills. So these are the most efficient air purifiers that we could find. So we need 10,000. When we opened up the actual system so people could sign up, there's about 3,240 or so people that have signed up. The first 100,000 paid for about 414 purifiers. We've been able to distribute all of that. We still, I think, need, in addition to the 3,000, we need 10,000, which is a total of $2 million. So I wanted to answer that question because this is something that we've been really looking at as a county and trying to figure out where we can. And in our conversations, I feel that we need to make sure that we expand it so it's not just EPA money, but we continue to find it in different places. So I wanted to make sure I share that information with you because the other point of this is really important to note. Because the County of San Diego declared the Tijuana River Valley a public health care crisis in September of 2001, that was the declaration that I led and my colleagues supported. And then last year, because we did the emergency, that is why right now, as a county, we are taking the lead on distributing the purifiers. But part of the conversation that we want to have today is how do we send it back to the Air Pollution Control District, which is the actual entity that should be managing this. So I wanted to share that to your point, and then please continue. And then whenever I am able to share, I'll share some other comments.
Yeah, I'm gonna wrap this up quickly. I'm just trying to make sure that I understand, the public, who wants to understand what is today's action about. To be clear, today's action, regardless of the air purifier, we will continue to enforce against the IBWC and other actors for whom we've issued the notice of violation, correct?
That's correct.
So that's separate and different, but you staff, you've heard in the staff report and in our director's comments right now, we'll continue to both seek compliance and then monitor it afterward. I'm all in on that. Whatever we got to do beyond count me in. With regard to the funding, Ms. Forbes, is there any funds behind that? Any additional funds besides the 160,000 that might be that the air purifiers might be eligible for, given the delta and the amount that this will actually purchase and the actual need? Any additional resources available?
So we could look to District AB 617 funds that have come from CARB. Those technically are limited to be used in those communities, but we have been having conversations with CARB. I know the chairwoman has as well, to ensure that there are there's flexibility in how we can use dollars like that. Certainly, you know, for all 10,000, that's a pretty large chunk of those dollars. So we would continue to seek out additional resources. And then, you know, certainly it's a much larger program than we have ever run before. So I will say this, we started the PAIR program that we've talked to this board about multiple times in the Portside communities. That was our first foray into that pilot program. And to my knowledge, we're one of only a handful of air districts that do air purifiers. It's not common, but we, as you've said, we will do what we can to make this situation better within our power. And so if, we can look at additional funding, we'll do everything we can.
And that's what I'd say, Ms. Foreman. I thank you for that answer. And I don't expect APC to pay for the entirety of this, but to the extent that we have flexible funds, you mentioned that no other air districts do this. I would point out no other air district is on the U.S. Mexican border with Tijuana River Valley.
Absolutely right.
And so we're going to be an outlier in this, and I don't mind that at all. It's for the benefit of the people we're here to serve. I would say, and I know Chair Vargas has been working on this issue aggressively, and so I will defer to hear if she has a motion she wants to make. My interest today would be to maximize the amount of money available. Mindful that this board, the previous iteration of the board, one of the reasons why I carried the Assembly bill to reform this board, this agency used to pass out electric lawnmowers to folks in the interest of air quality. I'd rather us deal with the issue in the Tijuana River Valley by issuing air purifiers. So I'd like to see the maximum award possible with a lot of flexibility to our director. We meet not every day, and the people of South San Diego deal with this every single day. So if we can empower our staff to act as swiftly as they possibly can, Ms. Forbes, I know that your contracting limits are relatively low. So again, I would hope that as this board deliberates, we think about maximum impact with the fastest amount of time. The situation is unacceptable, and the fact that it's on our board's agenda today shows that this district is taking it seriously. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor. You may have the lead. Please make your comments since you're here.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Is this?
We're not using them. We're relying on the owls.
Great. First of all, I think we're all on the same page that this is a crisis. I mean, that's why the public agrees this is a crisis. And I just want to make a couple comments on as we sort of figure out how to move forward. Number one, I agree with the mayor that we should be looking under every rock and in every place to maximize the available resources to get as many air purifiers out as quickly as possible. And I know we're already doing that. We've already begun doing that at the county, but to the extent that we could find some flexible funds within APCD to maximize the air purifier distribution immediately. That's number one. I think I also just really want to thank our researchers for your work, and I appreciate it. You know, as a academic by training, I just really value the diligence that you brought to continue to try to monitor these issues for our community. What I really like to ask is that we do everything possible as quickly as possible to make sure that there's data sharing. That our researchers have access to our data, that we have access to researchers' data, and that our instruments are calibrated. Because if some of these readings are right, I think that's a different conversation. And there's no reason for us to think that they're not at this point. So I think, but we need to all get on the same page. Whatever I can do to kind of put on two hats, my research scientist hat and my elected official hat at the same time to kind of get all of our data folks talking. And data sharing and our equipment calibrated. I'm at your service and at everyone's service. So that I think to me is number two in terms of occupancy here. And the third thing that I just wanted to comment is that, if as we continue moving forward, this has been a longstanding crisis, and it has absolutely gotten worse. I think that the changes that we've made at the county over the last couple of years in terms of how we do water quality testing has revealed that the situation was worse than we thought. And it was because we committed to good data. And I think as we continue to go forward on the data piece, I think it's gonna, I think more data will help us to kind of better monitor this issue and make the arguments we need to make. When we declared a state of emergency at the county, we've been advocating for the state to follow suit. We've been advocating for the federal government to follow suit. It is an emergency, and I think we all know that. And just making sure that all our data is on the same page, so that when we're going to Sacramento and we're going to Washington, And we're demanding not just the 2.5 million that we're gonna need for the air purifiers, and just did the math, but the other 311 million we need to fix the sewage treatment plant. And then for that to happen now, 400 million is sitting in the bank account, and the IWC hasn't spent it. So it's not just the 2.5 for the air purifiers, it's another 311, and then they need to spend it and they need to move. So just continuing for us to all not point fingers at each other and yell at each other, because I think we're all trying to fix this, but for us to get ourselves organized, to go to Washington and say, like, get moving now. So sorry, I have a childcare challenge, but I would love to continue to stay in this meeting if I possibly can call in remotely. I have to take her to her therapy session. So
Yeah, I was just informed that the rules are, obviously you can listen in, but unfortunately the rules are that you can't participate in sense of providing input or testimony, given.
With council.
Yeah, we confirm with council that. what the rules are.
The board can approve like a just cause. And one of the things for just cause would be childcare issues.
So.
I'm making a motion, we need to vote on it.
Who had-
I'll second.
When we made a motion. With Roberto Garcia and second by. Signed by Vargas. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
thank you guys. I'll call in.
Yeah,
5 minutes.
And you'll be able to participate. Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Mayor Gloria, you have any other comments? Because you may have to leave in a few minutes. And my suggestion is, there's still all the things that I think we want to talk about. To just concentrate on the fires for the moment, and then we can move on to some of the other topics some of you may have. And if we need to make a motion there for fires, we can. Any other comments from any government? Yes, Robert.
On just the air purifier again.
Well,
Yeah,
wait.
that's
Okay,
fine.
go ahead.
That's fine. Sorry.
No, I'm just wondering, like, can you put me on the queue, because I've had my hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
whenever you.
But you're absolutely right, I forgot.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I just had.
I've been saying a lot.
Sorry, I just had a quick question. Are we in contact, because there's lots of different types of air purifiers, are we ensuring that the type of air purifiers that are being used are the air purifiers that are gonna be the most impactful? I appreciate, Chair Vargas's comment that we also have to look at the cost of electricity. This is an EJ community. Electricity is very expensive, so I appreciate that is also being looked at, but I want to make sure that the filters we're using are the correct filters and the correct types of air purifiers. That's all I wanted to say about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, and I think, I know that there's been some discussion about, the different type of air purifier that might be more suitable to odors. So any information, I know that folks have been sending information to us. We're happy to consider all of that. And we would need to take those costs into account, obviously, as we're looking at a broader program.
Vice President.
Thank you. So first and foremost, I want to say thank you to the public who continues to ensure that this continues to be the top priority for our communities. I think all of us here are very concerned about the health and well-being of our communities, and it continues to be the top priority for us. We make these declarations, and why these declarations are so important is because it allows us to break down some of the barriers so that we can move resources, and so that we're able to do some of this work in a much faster mode, because we all know that government is not working fast enough. And, for me to see that, one of the reasons why I ran for office was because our communities, our NEJ communities, had for decades not been prioritized. And that includes Imperial Beach, Nestor, San Isidro, the east side of Chula Vista, the west side of Chula Vista, the communities that I represent, and I have the pleasure of partnering up with all of my colleagues here in National City as well, and the impact that the port has had in our region. So we can go on and on about all of this. And so I am grateful that there are so many different folks that are looking at it from different lenses. And I think serving on CARB and serving on the Air Pollution Control District, and now with the work that we're doing at SANAG as well, is, for me, it gives me an opportunity to look at it from a very different lens. And so I understand that you want to have maybe a different, we want to have a conversation about the recommendation that is before us. And I'm happy to make a motion so that we accept, the two recommendations that you're making. But I have some changes that I think that I would like, that I'm interested, so that we're making it a little bit broader. So I'm gonna share it with everybody because I wrote it down. And they can pass it around, and I'm gonna read it. I don't know if they can put it up on the agenda. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if we're able to put the agenda, the motion.
Is there, I'm sorry, is there anything?
I'm looking at my team. Did you guys send a motion? Yeah. So there was the motion was sent. So I'm gonna start reading it while you're looking at it. So I think a couple of things, because it'll help me. I'll use this motion recommendation so it can help me make some comments, okay? So number one, agree with the mayor 1000% that everywhere we go, we talk about the need for the root of the problem to be addressed, which is the infrastructure of the treatment plant and the work that we're doing with Mexico. But I think number one, the request for the action is that receive an update on the San Diego APCD investigation into order complaints in the Tijuana River Valley communities. That's one. Number two would be to approve and authorize the air pollution control officer to enter into an agreement with the county of San Diego to provide additional funding. I'm asking that we delete the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency so that we can make it broader. And it actually says to supplement the county's existing air purifier pilot program. I left it at that, not sending it all the way to you just yet, but just figuring that this is the first phase of it so that we can make sure we get additional dollars. I think to the mayor's point, we can make sure that we have, the $100,000 and any other dollars that we can maybe be able to find through the county. Number three would be to direct our air pollution control staff to be the lead agency for protecting the air quality for all residents in the South County region, and to return back to us as a board at the next board meeting on November with the following items. Number one, I think we need to develop a plan for to continue funding procurement and distribution of the appropriate purifiers or filters and/or personnel protective equipment. Funding options to explore include expanding grant eligibility for AB 617 program. This one's particularly important because, as you know, at CARB, we identified our communities in the border region because of the cross-border contamination that is happening because of the 8-hour idle border waits and all of that already. And so I want to make sure that we are able to expand zip codes from Nestor and other community areas that are not included in AB 617 right now, right? Right now, we only have San Isidro. Imperial Beach is not part of it. And so my interest is to bring this item forth to CARB. And if we have this in here, I can make sure that this is what I use to bring it to CARB and say, hey, we need to look at this and work with our local legislators, who, by the way, were all briefed today by the county as well. Reallocate funds from state federal agencies and the use of projected operating fund balance to the Air Pollution Control District Operation Fund. 3B is to develop a public information campaign to provide the public with relevant, accurate, and timely information on air quality in partnership with school districts, cities, and the county. Tools such as a dashboard or a smartphone app for sharing information to be accessible and available in all threshold languages. What I wanted to share is that there's a lot of models, right? We use it, I think, Councilmember Shu, Chairman said to me, we already use it for smog. On a side note, when we went ahead and created as a result of the public's request, we were able to get new testing for water quality in our beaches, right? And unfortunately, our beaches have been closed now for 1,000 days. But the reason why we're using this particular test was because our community demanded that we use this test. As a result of that, working with the EPA, we were able to identify, if it's red, don't get in the water. If it's yellow, you may be, your tummy may hurt. If it's green, it's a different color. So I think we need to come up with a system and there's plenty of them. Mexico City has them, Mexicali has them, other communities that are impacted have them. I know we have it on smog, but I think based on the information that we're hearing, I want to look at anything that is related to specific to Tijuana River Valley and the air pollutants that is bringing up, that those are the things that we're measuring and we let people know so that the school boards, the businesses in our communities know when the red flag comes up so that they understand what they need to do. And maybe then we can partner up, find additional PPE, I don't know, whatever the options are and whatever that partnership is with public health to be able to share that with the information. I'm explaining what the motion is, that's why I'm sharing so much about that. And although dashboards and smartphones apps and all of that are fabulous and exciting, not everybody has access to that information on real time. And so I am proposing number C, which is propose an agreement with a memorandum of understanding with the County of San Diego for our Office of Emergency Services. As the chair of the board, I get to serve as the chair of OAS. And one of the things that we do is we provide emergency alerts and rapid response in case of immediate threat to public health for air quality issues. I think it's one of the things that we should be doing. And so you use the system, I think this last week or something, it was used to be able to inform the community. My interest is that we continue to do that, and we actually have a system in place so that if there is an imminent threat to people's public health at that moment, that we're able to share that information. An example of when we do that, very well was when we found E. coli in the water in Imperial Beach, and we were able to let people know, stop drinking water, don't take showers, let us get you bottles of water, let's get other ways for people to be able to be taken care of. I think that's the only way, one of the only ways we're able to do that if it's in a regional perspective, because we sometimes focus a lot on Imperial Beach, and we have to focus on Imperial Beach because I think, as the council member said, the vice mayor, it is the center of the epicenter of where the challenges are taking place. But we also know that it's happening in Coronado, and it's Nestor and San Isidro. And also, I think we're going to have to figure out a way to have this communication with our binational community, because the air doesn't have a wall, and it is impacting our communities on both sides of the region. And I think it's important that we gather as much data as possible. And so that is the intent of my motion, so that we can be as explicit as we can as we move forward and continue to use the air pollution control district, district's power to be able to gather this data, so we continue to advocate at the federal and state level as well. Thank you. So that's my motion.
And, you know, you and I talked about these things, and I'm so thankful that you have put it on paper, so thank you, Chair Vargas.
I'm a nerd, I'm sorry.
I'll second.
Now, I have some comments to see if I could augment that, and we could talk about it, or these would be friendly amendments, so it would be interested. And we have some questions as well. So let me make a few quick suggested either additions or adjustments. One, with regards to the distribution of air purifiers, that we do look at not only efficient ones, but those that have the dual filtration, both the particulate matter and for odors using some carbon. I think we're going to be getting more information that we have latitude on how to put that. They may cost a little bit more, but they really may do the job. And I don't know if we even need to be in the motion, but I think we also need to consider, as Sanchez just asked me, how long do these filters last? Yeah. So I think we may have to have some plan ahead. After so many months, we may have to replace it.
I have that number for you, and I'll get it to you right now.
So to me, that's, and I don't think that needs to be in the but it's something that happens. With regards to a response from the county or from our emergency responders, and this is something that we're looking at profile. I think one of the difficulties is that this is a chronic, long-term type of emergency. We are more accustomed to dealing with something like a fire, in which a incident response plan is implemented, and within that, there are many protocols and a procedure. And once that is done, then you have the incident commander and notification process and protocols that go in place, all that works. And my suggestion is that we trigger that response. Granted, this is a chronic long-term incident, so the incident commander may have to make some adjustments in that regard. However, that response is what we need if we want to communicate and do the right kind of response for this emergency. It is an emergency, it is a crisis, and I think that response is appropriate. A lot of time went into that plan, and I think it's a pretty good plan. Let's use it rather than coming up with something else. The county can simply state that this is this kind of emergency. We want that implemented. We want an incident commander assigned and the resources given within our emergency protocol. And when that happens, ABCD will automatically be part of that process along with health and other agencies. That is in the book already. It's on our website.
Yep.
And then there's the office of,
You can mention advocacy.
no, the amendment to that. I don't know. I think she already has one in there. That's something like that. C. Or it would be. But in any case, to me, if that's a different D, you can. But I would just suggest that to be thrown in there because I think to me that's the best way to approach this.
So clarify, so when I say that, that we have a memorandum of understanding with the County Office of Emergency Service for the county to provide emergency alerts and rapid response in case of imminent threat to public health. For me, that was sort of the basic, but I think what you're saying is that if there is a public threat, that OAS would take over. I think that actually that's, like if we have wildfires, that's usually what happens. We do it anyway, but I don't know what, if
Yeah,
we need to be more explicit, I'm happy to take that.
I'm going to tell you
Yeah.
a concern I have.
Yep.
Earlier this week, I was told by a firefighter, dial 911. I was actually pretty insulted. I think that person should have been reprimanded. Because, you know, we have emergencies, we have critical information. And to me, this is 911. This is an emergency. Let's implement our system. Let's get an instance commanded. Let's do this, the communications that's supposed to happen in an emergency. We're not treating this like an emergency, right? It is an emergency. We have a system to do that. Let's do it. So I'm saying the APCD and this action here, we ask the Office of Emergency Services to go into action. Let's use the systems we have. Now, this is a different kind of, it's not a fire, but it is an emergency. And we want the communications, we want that kind of command structure, and we want someone who's experienced and knowledgeable of how to deal with emergency to take command.
Yeah.
That keeps us all informed. That keeps us in the know. We have someone to go to, and that person has that responsibility. You know, it shouldn't be us politicians having it. We don't have that kind of experience. We don't have that kind of skill level, and then we do all kinds of stuff. There is a structure to deal with emergency.
Push back and I'll tell you, as the chair of OAS, that you do need the politicians who care about the communities to be there. I'll tell you why. Because in the floods, if it wouldn't have been for that, we wouldn't have been able to move $10 million and or all the other things that we did. So
Yeah,
I get you.
I
So intent is there. Do you want to make any?
obviously, politicians are involved with
Yeah.
emergency. We are. But you have a staff person that actually
Yeah.
helps, right? That was my friend's suggestion.
Can I add something to that, though? Just really quickly. Public information. In other words, like when we had the fire in North County, the battery fire in North County, and then there were the separately smells that are happening for Southern Carlsbad. Everybody wants to know what happened, what's happening. So public information to really coordinate that. One concern that people in there have is that who does the information? Is it Air Pollution Control District? Is it the county? Which one?
Yeah, so I think my understanding now, I know, I'll wait for follow. No, it's okay. So my understanding now that anything related to the Air Pollution Control District and air related issues, it is the APCD who must take the direction. And then they work with public health, which is our county team, and together we're able to share information. Am I correct?
So
Depending on the.
Yeah, it's a little nuanced, right?
Yeah.
And so, our team is operating monitors, out looking for odors when we receive complaints, responding. And then, the monitoring data is compared to standards. Obviously, if we're seeing an air quality issue, we will issue an advisory and coordinate with the county on that. We don't have, the authority to require people to take action as a result. What we're doing is providing advice. And then if there's additional action that the public health officer would require, that would be something different. Right now, as we're working through this situation, we're working with the county at multiple levels and ATSDR, NCPH, and CARB to
get some assistance with interpreting air quality data and messaging for the public. We can learn from that process as we go forward to identify. But like I said, our role is a little bit nuanced, and so we will put out, for example, smoke advisories about what we're seeing from a wildfire, and put out the information. But we're in coordination with the county to ensure that we're working together.
So may I suggest that for this particular item, right, we have what we have now, but I think that maybe as a board member, after hearing what my colleagues have said and some of the communications that we've had with other folks around North County and other issues, because right now we're focusing solely on Tijuana River Valley, but we know that the need is so great, particularly in our aged communities in Escondido, San Marcos, and some of the other communities. And so I'm wondering if a separate item, and this is just a request from me to our executive, is that you all come back with recommendations for a bigger public communication sort of alert in terms of, and then what is emergency, what is crisis, and how do we share information? I think same thing, different, but it's different, right? So right now we're addressing specifically the issue related to Tijuana River Valley and the pollutants that are impacting our communities. But I think from a bigger organizational component, if you can come back to, I would request, if not in November, at our next meeting, even if it's the first steps of what it would look like, and then what can we do as your partners in the county to help you support that? And I'm sure my colleagues would be happy to, from on the board, to think about how we can help. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm wondering, do you want to make a part of this motion or?
No.
No, that's what I'm saying. I think that it's just a request that I'm making separate. I don't know if we need
I don't even know if we need a motion because we have to stand for a proposal to come back. That you talk.
Yeah.
You got to nod the head.
Yes.
To clarify what point, I mean, we work very closely with the county, first responders
Yeah.
through hazmat and DEHQ. Our inspectors are not the first responders, so but we work in partnership. Williams' team is constantly in communication with the hazmat folks. And so that also plays into this, but to your point, Chairwoman, I think that it's, absolutely in our plan to come back with, plan to address this specific issue, but I think it will also help us clarify those roles and issues, beyond the Tijuana River.
And on that particular item, I will also like to request that included in that solution, in the regional solution, that you include leadership from school boards and our city councils and city managers. Because one of the things that happens in crisis is that they're the first ones to respond to your point, Chairman. And so we need to make sure that they are included in that map so that they're able to activate, right? I mean, Moises from Sweetwater calling me and asking me directly, I'm like, oh my God, let me figure this out for you, is very different than him calling APCD or the OAS team and making sure that it gets done. I think it'll remove a lot of barriers. So yes, that would be my second request.
Yeah, and with the shaking it, I think that's going to happen. That we may not need to add that to this.
I think it's
this particular motion now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have another comment, which I don't think we need to add verbally into the motion. I think the motion is pretty comprehensive. So, but it has to do with as we try to roll out up to 10,000 there, we're going to need help. And I'm happy to say that this agency is doing pretty good working with the community, and that we go to the community and our network of community participants for help. Go to organizations like Casa La Familia, go to the schools that are affected in their community, and they say, help us with the distribution. Now, we may have a priority list, families that don't have air conditioning, families that have children, with whatever priority list we have, that's, I'll leave that to staff. But I want to encourage us to get help from the community, who knows the community, people who know the community, know the culture, know the language, and to distribute, because I think that's the best way to do it. They're the people that have trust in the community, and they have more hands, more bodies. Help us, because we're going to need a lot of help. 10,000 children is a lot of buildings.
And to be clear, that's the goal, right? Because that's the number that we have, but right now we only have money for a smaller amount.
Right.
And I want to make clear that the purifier issue, that making the recommendation, which is a short-term solution for our communities right now, and I've been informed that it's about a year that the current purifier and the 2 filters that we're getting is how long it takes, right? Yes. Yeah, about, and so that's how long it's lasting for now, but I think it's important to mention, this was a program where we're duplicating from when the ship exploded, remember? That's when the county provided funding, and and it was really the Environmental Health Coalition, our saviors all the time around environmental justice issues, that were at the front lines helping us with this process. And it was how we were able to identify how we were going to make sure that the formula worked for those that were in greater need. And I know a lot of people still want them. So we're trying to figure out how we get additional, like not only the filters, but have that list as well. Sorry.
All right, I better go with, I saw Marcus. Okay, so.
Can I go?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I have a couple of questions. And I want to start by thanking Chairwoman Vargas for the work and the motion that is being brought forward, supportive of it, and for the work that it took. And I know this is not the first time, you've been at it for a while. And thanks staff as well, thank the researchers. And I want to echo member Tara who left, but I really want to stress the importance of the data and sharing that data amongst everybody that is here and trying to respond is really important, because I know that the community is living with the issue and they're responding to the issue as they're living it. But when data is being found and there's different data, it just creates an extra layer of confusion and alarming, and it's not the right thing to do. So I really can stress enough that data should be everybody should be talking to each other and helping each other to really get us to where we need to get to in terms of resolution. And if I can be of any assistance, I'm more than happy to help in that area as well. And the second point that I had is in relation to the violations that we've issued. If you can walk me through this. So far we've done 2, yeah?
Yes, 2, 1 to 2 to IBWC and 2 to the Odor.
I have a couple of questions related to that. One is, so there's a violation issue. They're going to have a certain amount of time to correct their actions, I'm assuming.
No, so the request is immediate action. We are actually, as mentioned in our piece, we are meeting with them at the end of this month, and requesting them to provide any immediate steps that they're taking or have taken. And after that meeting, we'll have more information, more idea of the next step.
So
if I could add to that, every day kind of violation that we document related to the failures of the equipment that we've talked about is a new day of violation. And so that is continuing to occur. So just because we've only written 2 pieces of paper doesn't mean we're talking about only 2 days of violation. So we're, going to be meeting with them, going to be insisting on immediate action. But, these violations are continuing to accrue to the extent that our inspectors are documenting.
So then that gets to my final question. What does it accrue to if they're not doing or correcting, and they might not have a plan to correct? What is that? What's the step?
So the next step would be to proceed to an order of abatement through our hearing board, which could then, which could be enforced in Superior Court. So we would be proceeding down that enforcement path.
Okay. Are there any fines that are in between that are issued?
Typically with notice of violations, any notice of violations, there are fines associated, and basically our authority from the health and safety code.
So do these include fines as well?
Yes.
What's the amount?
That's part of the discussions and part of the settlement.
I would encourage that we maximize the fine. Is just because this is very significant and it's not something that has just happened overnight. It's been many years. So I wouldn't go slow. I wouldn't go low. I would go the max. That would be my ask. And then just on the class, I just wanted to, because this is, the area is county, and then there's a little bit of city of San Diego. So I would like to ask if we can amend C to also include the city of San Diego's OES, just because going back to the flood, there was county, city, and blah, blah, blah. So here, perhaps calling them as well, I think it would be useful, just so everybody's talking to each other. And that would be all. Thank you.
Any other comments? I have a question. One question. Go ahead.
Yeah, so on the filters, so the filters specifically address hydrogen sulfide.
Not a scientist.
Yeah, well, no, I know you're not a scientist, but no, I just say that because we do need to know that what kind of chemicals are addressing, because as I understand, one of the most important chemicals and what's causing a lot of the odor, and it isn't just odor as I understand it, it's chemical, though it's impacting health. But so will the filters address hydrogen sulfide?
So we haven't selected the filter that will be used. And so we would, our team has been researching ones that specifically will. And we're happy to consider any suggestions that are provided to us.
Okay, yeah. We want to, if you all, because the county wanted to, not reinvent the wheel. So if we can check and have the county staff check what if the filters that were being purchased, because that might change the cost too. But I really think that it's important that these filters that address Dr. Garcia, member Garcia's point, some of the key issues, and the hydrogen sulfide, I think, is that. So, and I did go with the monitoring team from Austin Fire Department. I want to thank them because I went there yesterday from 2:30 to 2:30, but from 12:30 to 2:30, and I saw for myself the monitors went off, and it's not just the monitors going off. It was how I felt, what my body was telling me. My throat started burning, felt like acid reflux, and up until even today, I was still feeling that in my throat. So just have to acknowledge that there that air wasn't good where we're at, and so there are shifts, it changes, and all that. But hydrogen sulfide, that was what the monitors were going off on, and so that's what I think that we just need to make sure that part is addressed. And I don't know if that needs to be in motion, but
I don't know if that people might need to be in motion, but before I forget, I think you need to do some paperwork in case you have residual illness as part of the work. You're going to get a big fine, sure.
Well, we're not getting paid, so I don't know if that.
No, but
for workers' comp.
No, I think that's the point that needs to be made. I don't know, need to change that because I don't want to. I mean, for this motion, I want to keep it going, and if there's some detail.
No, but I think that's a top priority.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because I think there's other particles in that we have found that I think we need to our address. So absolutely,
That's not a.
no, yeah, that's absolutely
Great, and then agree with the data sharing. It should go both ways. I hope is APCD. So my question is staff. So are we besides our own monitoring data, are we also accepting data from outside entities who are monitoring hydrogen sulfide specifically?
So sure, I mean, we can definitely look at that data. We've asked to sit down with the researchers and we have South Coast that's here today monitoring in the area, and they brought their mobile van down. And David, if you want to give any more details on that, but we had, I think, put out a request to co-locate with the researchers. So the more I think that we can all work together, the better. So yes, we're happy to share our data.
Yeah. I've shared mine, so I would kind of confused about it. So let's get that straightened out.
Yeah, please, thank you.
Appreciate that, Paul. So just if everyone can share as much data and exchange and communicate, the communication is big. So as much as we're communicating as possible on these things, that's important. And my other, so this is an emergency. as I wanted to propose adding an E, that we send a letter to the governor and to the president requesting a declaration of emergency. Did we?
We make that a separate motion now.
Yeah, we could do it, yeah, okay, that's fine. We go through the first.
We'll get through this. I just want to make a little quick comment following up on member Gomez. As far as fine, if they have a lot of money that was allocated, I think for. Is there any way that could ask for mitigation, $2 million worth of filters?
So I think the first step is for them to come into compliance. That's the first part of the violation stop program. Once they are in compliance, there is an aspect of where they can, how they can use that money to benefit the public.
So it's called our supplemental environmental program, and that was what we did with the Navy in response to the Navy ship fire that resulted in funding for the CARE program. So there may be an opportunity.
What do you mean by compliance? Does that mean fixing?
The problem.
Fixing problem, but that's going to take a lot, right? I mean, months, if not almost years, right?
There's different steps in the process. I think the first step, making sure that the equipment that they currently have is being used, is being upgraded, or not upgraded, but repaired and fixed. You have pump stations that are down. You have plants, the plant that isn't operating at its full capacity. So that's the first step.
No, I'm talking about finding some money for the filters. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not, that's it. When repairs fine, they're going to do it. They have to do it. They're going to fix it. They have $40 million. Is that correct? Is that true?
Yeah, me.
Right. We're asking for a small bit of that mitigation for the suffering that's occurring in the community now.
So I think, the chair, with your permission, I think part of the motion includes our team coming back in November with a bigger plan and then also include sort of funding. So maybe that might be the place.
I don't know. I'm not saying, but I just said it should be part of the motion. I think there's probably.
I think it is. So I think it's a good idea to figure out if there's money there.
Well, if she's not, because they're going to potentially put, that's all.
Yeah.
Yes,
Pot of money that you can't get right now.
That's exactly
Yeah.
right. So that was my side comment. Any additions, comments on motion? If not,
So before the last thing I want to share on this particular item with the motion, if my colleagues will bear with me for a second, is that as a result of the community's request, I did send an official letter to the Center for Disease Control and the California Department of Public Health. And so to investigate the health impacts of the cross-border health. And so, but I want to make sure it's clear because the community has been working so hard on this issue and we listen. And so now the National Center for Environmental Health and the Agency for Toxic Substance and Disease Registry are now collaborating with local and state health agencies to develop FEA, which is really the urgent response that we're talking about. And they're going to be here on the ground, I think in the next week or so. Yeah, they're coming down. They're coming. And so I think why this matters is I think to supplement some of the data that's already been identified. But I think it's important to mention that we have to tap into every federal and state agency. It's their responsibility to make sure that our communities are healthy and safe. And so, our public health officer, APCD, researchers, we got to get this done. And so with that, thank you for accepting my motion and for the great discussion.
I didn't see that.
Sorry, I think that this motion is, because there's other things I want to talk about. And you limited me to.
We have about 30 minutes left, so I want to make sure that we at least get this done and maybe get a few others done as well. I have a comment from Carol Lever, please.
Member Lawson Reamer, you can unmute yourself if you have comment. Go ahead. We can hear you.
I just wanted to make sure to voice my support for my colleagues' motion and appreciate being able to join remotely. So thank you.
Great.
One air purifier Is that for a whole house? Because that was something Member Sanchez was asking me. I actually don't know that. So like when we're
Right now, we're providing one air purifier and two,
But how much square footage does one air purifier like clean? It's like everybody has to sleep in the same room?
It's one room. I don't know the square foot.
Okay. So that's just something for us to keep in the back of our minds when we're calculating this $2 million for 10,000 units. Is it really 10,000 units? Is everybody really is?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, well, there's no question.
are we ready to vote on motion? We need to clarify the motion.
I just want to confirm that the motion that is on the screen, that's still, Member Vargas's motion, and that includes, comments from Member Chu, our Chair Chu, regarding utilizing the incident response plan for the Office of Emergency Services, as well as in that same item C, including the city, based on Member Gomez's tip comments. Yep, I believe everything else is considerate. Yes.
Any other questions, comments? We'll make
Call
this
the vote.
And call for the vote, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Member, last meeting, did I hear aye from you by any chance?
Aye.
So we can conclude your vote. The nays, motion done.
Thank you. That motion passes with members Elo Rivera and Medina being absent. And all members, and Gloria being absent, with all other board members who are present voting aye.
Great. Mayor Sanchez, you have something else to bring up? I want to bring up the issue of this board repeating a request for an emergency declaration by the governor and with the federal government as well. I have been reading the response from the state as to why this cannot be established as a emergency. One of their points is that this is not a act of God, weather related. And I think there are, as I recall, the sewage facilities were damaged during a storm. That right, a couple of the pumps stopped working because of something I read someplace that was wrong.
Chairperson, if I may, that was with it, but based on our evaluation, it's really the infrastructure that's very deficient, and basic maintenance is not being conducted.
Okay, let me ask another question. Has the amount of rainfall affected the sewage flow or the flow going out in and out and having less of an issue?
Well,
either too much or too little?
I know for the record, we're listening to Deputy Director Miney.
Do you want to come to
If you come to the podium.
So the amount of flow right now is we're talking about dry flow. There hasn't been any precipitation. But we're still seeing an enormous amount of sewage flow into the river right now that is not being treated because of the infrastructure is very deficient.
Right. What I'm asking is, if there was rain or more or less rain, doesn't matter to me. As long as it's, the weather that's doing it, the grader that's doing it, that's not actually, would that help or cause in some way hindering this issue?
Well, it depends how you look at it, right? Because right now the infrastructure wouldn't be able to process that additional flow, right? But then you could have some dilution of the concentration that we're seeing in sewage.
I just want to make the point. The letter we got back would seem to be someone who's writing the letter as if every reason they could think of why it wouldn't qualify for emergency. So,
So the rain flow, yes, we're not seeing that, but what we are seeing is an impact based on the heat. The heat has exacerbated
another act of God.
And the number of complainants have increased significantly because.
And the reason why that's important is that defies the letter we got from the state saying that this was not weather reported or that has some kind of environmental factor qualifying as a disaster. We had flooding in the city, National City and city of San Diego. It took less than 2 weeks, or a week or so to declare an emergency.
No. Same day.
Oh, but
That's how fast you are. You
Oh, yeah.
talking about it. Because it was raining.
Oh, he did it on that night.
It was raining, right? So I just want to say that we need to fire back and say, Governor, we need someone to write a response, looking for ways to make it qualify as an emergency, not trying to find ways to exclude it as an emergency. So my motion here is to reiterate a letter from the APCD, passed by this board, to ask again for reevaluation of this issue, this crisis as a state of emergency, to allow additional state funding to come to this, to relieve this emergency from the state, so that at some point we can get reimbursed for some of the expenditures that we're currently having, as well as get more resources, and also to make it faster, easier for us to respond. So that's motion. Let's
I'll second.
let our
I could
Executive Control District Officer propose that letter. It could be your letter. It's just that it's going to have the support from the board.
I could second that. Would you, wouldn't we also include the federal government too, though, with that, or the president, not just the governor?
Everybody, yes. Well, let's go for both executives, the president as well as the governor. It might be the similar letter, but it is essentially another request for consideration to declare emergency. Any other, so this motion and second, any other comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Any abstentions or nations? No.
Can I just
No, no.
clarify the motion?
Yes.
So, would you like the letter to go back to the board? That would delay it until.
No, I trust your writing ability is great, so, and you know exactly what I'm talking about in terms of asking for another review. Let's have a reviewer that at least be impartial, if not helping us, rather than trying to find a way why it doesn't qualify.
I just want to confirm, Member Lawson Reamer, your aye online. Member Lawson Reamer,
Yeah,
your aye.
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. With Elo Rivera, Gloria, and Medina absent, that motion passes with all board members who are present voting aye.
Great. Dr. Berger, do you have comment?
Yeah, I do have a comment. I just really think it's important that we address some of the comments that were made today about the health impacts of hydrogen sulfide. I appreciate everything staff and board is doing to raise issues to this, but if you guys look at Google Maps, Berry Elementary is 2 miles away. Nestor Language Academy, less than 2 miles away. Mar Vista Academy, Southwest High School, that's not including daycares, preschools, community centers. It's not including our assisted living facilities. It's not including all our vulnerable people in these communities. We heard from a pediatrician who actually works just down the street, a few miles away, about the effects that she's seen. She has presented this board. She has presented the board of supervisors. She has presented the governor's office a letter signed by 25 community pediatricians, including myself. As a community pediatrician, not as a member of this board, I signed that letter, stating that we as pediatricians are very, very concerned about the health impacts of our most vulnerable. Not just the babies that are born, but the babies also developing, okay? I don't even want to know the incidence of premature birth. I don't want to know the risks, because Mr. Rhodes very eloquently presented the fact that, children are developing, their body surface areas are different. But what about fetuses that are developing? What about pregnant mothers? Their metabolic rates and demands are different. What about our elderly? Theirs are too. So that are homebound, that we have a lot of people since COVID that are working virtually. They're in their homes. This is a coastal community. Most coastal homes do not have air conditioning. We open our windows, and that is how we get fresh air. We had a heat wave this weekend. So what? We're gonna close all our windows so that we avoid the smell, and then people have heat stroke. So this is, I agree with Chair Shu, this is an emergency. This is an emergency to the health of a very vulnerable community, and I'm sorry, I just had to go for it. Thank you.
We need to vacate this room, so I want to make some last quick comments, and the clerk has a few comments as well that we need to make before we leave. As we go forward, I want to make sure that we as a community look at all the information at least at face value, and know that everyone is doing their best, and that the information is all information that we need to consider. There's no information out there that should be thrown out simply because you didn't work on it, because you don't know somebody. Now, if someone comes and says they're sick, we take that at face value. If someone comes and tells us the reading of one of these toxins, hydrogen sulfide, is high, we take that at face value right from the start. And we get the explanations from the experts, and we consider the explanation of the experts because they're experts in that information. But it's for us to understand. We do not have to doubt other people who are trying to help. We're here to accept all the information, and we're going to share the information, and we're going to do it as fast as we can so we can deal with this problem and look for solutions. Whether it's an alert system, whether it's making sure that the right people get the right filters, the people that need it. That's how we're going to go forward, and we're going to work with all our community partners. That's the spirit that we need to have to go forward if we're going to do this right and gain the trust of the public as we move forward. We cannot afford to do it any other way. With that, we're going to close, but I'm going to ask the clerk to give us any parting information that we need to have.
If we're adjourning the meeting at this time, then all remaining items that are on the agenda will be heard at the next governing board meeting in November.
And our next meeting is November 14th at 2 p.m. Back at this location.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And meeting for the well said.